Hi, I'm Pat Thatcher.
And I'm Margaret Gifford, and we're from Sotheby's International Realty.
And you know, Margaret, I think the word that best describes this real estate market this year is opportunistic.
I think that's a great word to describe what the real estate market's doing now.
I think it is also, and that says if you're a seller, by golly, get your house ready correctly.
And if you're a buyer, do your homework.
So if you want to be part of this opportunistic real estate market, jump
on that horse.
Carlson Printing for all your printing needs. 508-548-7303 or toll free at 1-800-696-7303. Our email address is carlsonprinting@aol.com. Carlson Printing for all your printing needs.
Hosting services for fctv.org are provided by Meganet Communications. Meganet offers a wide array of internet services including Mega Backup Cloud Service, server colocation, T1, fiber, Metro Ethernet, as well as telephone services such as hosted PBX and digital voice. Their number one goal is to keep your communications network up and running and allow you to focus on growing your business. 877-634-2638 or meganet.net.
Hi, welcome everyone to the Monday, May 21st, 2018 Selectmen's Meeting. We will first go into executive session under General Laws, Chapter 38, Section 21A3, to discuss mediation of Best Revenge 5 LLC versus Town of Falmouth, damages caused by a boat fair. And after executive session, we will return to open session. As chair, I state that to not go into executive session would prejudice the town's position in this matter. And I will look for a second. Thank you, Doug. By roll call?
Brown, aye. Patterson, aye.
English Braga, aye.
Moran, aye. Thank you. Welcome everyone to the Selectmen's Meeting for May 21st, 2018. We're now at our open session call to order. If you would please stand.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is a congratulations to Doug for having won the election. Congratulations, Doug.
Thank you.
And the reorganization of the Board of Selectmen.
I would nominate Sue Moran for chair of the board.
Second?
All those in favor?
Hey. Aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks is right.
Next, we have vice chair.
Madam Chair, I would
Sam?
nominate Megan English Braga if she's willing.
Sure, thank you.
I'll second that.
All right.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We'll carry on.
Thank you. Looking forward to a great year of finishing some accomplishments and adding others. Next on the agenda, do we have any proclamations?
I don't think we have any proclamations.
Okay, great. Then we'll go straight to recognition with Ms. Braga.
Do we have any?
No,
No,
no.
that's just for public comment.
Okay.
So I just wanted to recognize tonight really the life and the legacy of Sia Karplus, who passed away on May 10th at the age of 54 after a very long battle with cancer. If you don't know who she is and what she's done for this town, you know, I'm tempted to say you've been living under a rock, but it wouldn't be kind, so I'll just tell you that just some of her accomplishments, which are so profound in this community, really include and focus around some of the most challenging issues that we face as a town, as many towns face, around energy efficiency, around the issues of water quality, and the health of our estuaries, you know, dealing really with the challenge of nitrogen loading in our waterways. And these are the things that Sia really dedicated her remarkable intellect and talent to. She grew up here and went away, had really a phenomenal education and professional training, and brought that expertise back here to her hometown and applied it to the issues that meant the most to her. And she really worked on those right up until the last couple of days before she passed away. She leaves here in this community beyond the legacy of what she's done to really improve our town. She leaves behind her husband and her 2 children and her parents and her brother and his family, all who still live here in Falmouth and have really participated in their own ways to the building of our community. So I hope that we recognize not just her accomplishments, but how remarkable it is when someone receives the kind of news that she lived with for a long time, knowing that her time was likely limited, and rather than being mired down in what is, you know, the worst news you can get, she really applied herself into the last moments to improving the town that she loves. So I hope we just recognize her accomplishments and think about her family for a moment of silence, please.
Thank you.
Madam Chair? I might just expand a bit on that because Sia was active across all of Cape Cod. She didn't just support Falmouth as a community in our environmental impact issues, but was active in helping out and studying the nitrogen pollution of estuaries across all of Cape Cod. And if she's not more of a public face, it's because she was the technical person that was gathering the evidence and providing it to the decision makers so that we could be better informed about moving forward on how we could mitigate the environmental impact that we as humans have created. She was a special person. I knew her myself, and Megan is absolutely right. I knew she had cancer for the last 2 years. I had no idea that it had gotten out of control, and so this was a total shock to me. But her family has been contributing to this town for a long time, beyond Sia herself, and she has some remarkable children as well. So we're sad for the family, and she will be truly missed.
Sam, I know you also have an announcement.
Yes, we're going into announcements? Sure. I wanted to mention that the Falmouth High School art students actually have an exhibit at the Nopska Lightkeeper's House. There was an exhibit today from 4 to 5:30, but there will be another exhibit tomorrow at 4 to 5:30 in case you have an opportunity to stop by. They will also be exhibiting at the Woods Hole Public Library, so if you look at their hours, whenever they're open, you could go in and actually take a look at it. But I've been told that I'm going tomorrow, so I haven't seen the exhibit, but the reviews are terrific. And I know that Jane Baker is the art student up there, and she is such an inspiration to her students and such a mentor to them also on a personal basis. She's just highly respected. And so if you have a chance to go by and see what is produced by our school children, I thoroughly recommend it. And can I mention one more thing? Speaking of our schools, tomorrow night is the Volunteers in Public Schools Recognition Dinner that will be held at the Coonamessett Inn. I don't know whether there are any spaces available, but you could call the VIP's office at the high school if you participated in any of those activities and see if you can get a reservation. But It's a phenomenal organization, unduplicated anywhere, I think, in the world, that so many private citizens are willing to give of their talents and their time to help the youth in our schools, to help them engage them. I know I work with with six fifth graders, and these are the kids that really pick up math fast and get bored and then get into trouble. And I basically try to distract them for a while. But that's the kind of little efforts that people reach out. And there are over 1,000 people that actually contribute as far as the VIPS program here in town. And that's an amazing indication of what Falmouth is all about. So that dinner is tomorrow night, starts at 5:30.
Great, Ms. Braga?
On June 9th, the Portuguese American Association, the Navigator Club in Falmouth, will be celebrating the Day of Portugal. This year is a very special year because the President of Portugal is actually coming to the United States right around that weekend and will be here for a period of time visiting our region as well as going down to Washington, D.C. Day of Portugal is a phenomenal meal. You can buy tickets. You can just go on the website. I think the ticket is $35. You get an unbelievable amount of homemade food by probably some of the best cooks in this town. And you also get to see a traditional folkloric dance troupe that comes from Rhode Island, and they have music and dancing in traditional Portuguese fashion. It's open to anybody. You don't have to be Portuguese. You can just come and enjoy. It's a very family-friendly event. So hopefully folks will make the trek way out to East Falmouth off of Sandwich Road. But there's more of that on the website. You can take a look if you want details.
It is a great time. Doug?
I just want to add a little bit of a highlight for two of our local girls lacrosse teams who are doing very well in the state tournament. We're heading off to the state tournament. The Falmouth Academy girls have one loss, and the Falmouth High School girls also have one loss. Falmouth High School team, I think right now, is ranked 10th in the state. Falmouth Academy are ranked 14th in the state. The Falmouth Academy girls just had one girl score her 400th goal in her career, which is second in the country ever. And the Falmouth High School girls have 4 different girls who scored 100 goals in their career. And just the girls lacrosse within Falmouth is really doing quite well. The state tournaments will probably be happening before we meet again. So just to wish those two teams very well.
Absolutely, and we'll look for that news. That's it? Okay, great. One more? Oh, sure.
Well,
Kathleen?
you want to do it during a comment period, talk about the wellness fair?
Right, that's what I was thinking
Yeah.
would be coming up next. Okay. Next we have on the agenda public comment, which is an opportunity for folks to speak for 2 minutes on an item that's not already on the agenda. Kathleen, do you want to go ahead and go first? Yeah, sure. That's what I was thinking.
Hi, I'm Kathleen Haynes. I'm chairperson of the Commission on Disabilities and a resident of Falmouth. The Commission is taking on an initiative this year. We're having a wellness fair. It's the first done around here. It focuses on the programs, services, vendors that all impact the disabled. Right now, we have about 20 vendors signed up. We are also having a wheelchair obstacle course, which Owen Smith, who is doing it as his Eagle Scout project. And that's constructed. I'm putting together a lot of the rest of it. There's 18 obstacles altogether. We're getting wheelchairs from Royal Megansett. So if you don't have a wheelchair, just line up. We'll have one for you. We're going to have food. Just a lot of fun. And it's the first time it's been done. It may not be a huge thing, but it's important to get it started, and you have to start somewhere.
Great initiative. What's the date and time?
It's on June 23rd, which is Saturday, the second end of the month. Yeah, right. It's 10 to 4. The obstacle race is going to be from 12 to 3, so we can get people signed up, and they have to sign a waiver for injuries or anything like that. Kids 4th grade and up will be allowed to do it if they have a parent using a wheelchair with them or behind them, walking behind them. They can't do it alone. It's not that it's a risky course, it's just kids in wheelchairs just could be a hazard. So we want to give them the opportunity, but we also want to play it safe. So we have a van coming from Mobility Works in Attleboro, a handicap accessible van that they'll be displaying in the parking lot. CERT will be there, the emergency management team with their vehicle. So it's just a day to highlight what disabled people can do. Not what they can't do, but what they can do, and how much there is to do. We've asked the 300 committee to come, for example, because they have the handicap accessible pass that people who are in wheelchairs can go out on. You don't have to sit in the house all day. Look at me on Main Street.
Great event.
So we're trying to, push this thing and hoping that anybody who knows somebody will tell somebody, and we'll get a crowd there.
And it's at the Gus Canty.
It's at Gus Canty, yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Mr. McConaty. Great. Thanks, Kathleen.
Yes, indeed,
Welcome, Peter.
Good evening. Peter McConaty, Deputy Director of Public Works. Congratulations, Mr. Jones. I want to talk to you tonight about two items, both related. One is the Sandwich Road athletic fields. The athletic fields going along very well. The contractor has been working out there for a couple of weeks now, working very well with Public Works. Actually today, the sod actually went down, so the field is covered, and they had the irrigation going today. Very high pressure of water. They had 2 zones going at one time, so it's a high pressure of water going across the field. They're going to water that for the next month. The contractor will be in to, the field is closed, the contractor will be in on a daily basis or every other daily basis to make sure that the watering is done correctly and the field is taken. But one item that I did want to talk about is Falmouth has several social media sites. And the social media sites, I don't get involved with them, and I don't have any desire to be involved with them. I understand them. I understand that the information is direct, fast information to get out there. Falmouth residents are very concerned about what goes on. They want to be part of it. But this past weekend, there happened to be on one of the particular websites discussions. There had to be a lot of discussion on the Sandwich Road fields, and in particular the contractor. And it was basically just smearing of the contractor to the point where contractor worked yesterday, which was Sunday on the field, got a phone call from the park superintendent, Jeremiah Pearson, who was on the field. So we were all on the field working yesterday together, but the discussion did come up about the discussions that were coming on the website. And what concerns me about it is when we go out to bid, Public Works, when we put project bids out, we're already caught and stuck with the procurement laws where you have to go with the lowest responsible bidder. We do the best we can, but what happens and what concerns me with this is that contractors are going to come up and they're going to see this, and they're going to be looking at this information. Anybody can get on and they can Yelp a contractor or Yelp anybody else today. And once that information's out there, it's out there and it'll never come back. So what I think the discussion is doing is actually 180 polarizing what we're trying to do in Falmouth to keep it, keep us concerned. Contractors see this information, they're not going to want to bid on our projects. They're not going to come into town because they're going to say, I've worked so many years for a construction site, I have a construction site up and running, and then I'm going to come in to work with Falmouth and I'm going to get this. And I just think it's going to have the negative effect with us. So I'm speaking to the selectmen, but speaking to the audience and speaking to the public. I just think in the future we want to really be careful with the information that gets put out there because, it's not really who we are in Falmouth. It's not what we do. We want to welcome people. We want to welcome the contractors. We want to welcome competitiveness. So that's all I wanted to say. I know I had 2 minutes with it. What I would like to say is at a future date in an upcoming meeting, I would like myself and Jeremiah Pearson, the park superintendent, to come back and give you a full presentation of what had happened. We have some fantastic photos. There's been a drone out in the field taking photos of the drone, so photos of the field at high levels.
We'll go ahead and schedule that because we're out of time. I'm only allowed 2 minutes on this, but
beautiful.
We definitely will, and thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Peter.
Thank you.
Anyone else on public comment? Dan?
Good evening. Dan Shearer, Precinct 6. I was very disappointed when I opened the Enterprise to find out that there's a question about what the new senior center and the Gus County I would never have voted for at that site if I hadn't been promised that
Dan, pardon me, public comment isn't allowed when we have an agenda item, and we are going to hear that presentation later, so I have to stop you by reason of the rule. And if you want to stick around, then we might be accepting comment at the time of the agenda.
Okay.
Thank you.
It's under the 810 business. It's the fourth one.
Are there any other public comment items which are on subjects not on the agenda? Okay, thank you.
Sue, do you want to mention the number of just have people refer people?
No, right this second. We're going to be going till midnight as it stands. Okay, next we have the first item under summary of actions, licenses. We have an application for a special one-day liquor license, the Casual Gourmet at Highfield Hall, 58 Highfield Drive, for events on Saturday, June 30, 2018, Sunday, July 8, Sunday, August 5th, Sunday, August 26th, and Saturday, December 8th.
I move approval.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Next, we have on the agenda, application for a special one-day liquor license, Barnstable County Agricultural Society County Fair Beer Garden, on Monday, July 23rd, and Sunday, July 29, 2018.
I think
Through, rather. Thank you.
Move approval.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Next, we have on the agenda an application for a transfer lodging house license, Woods Hole Passage, at 186 Woods Hole Road. Is the applicant here? Okay, is there a motion?
I move approval.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Next on the agenda, on administrative orders, we have the approval of the land management plan and conservation restriction for Andrews Farm property and Andrews Pond 14 Trail Conservation Restriction. Mr. Suso, do you want to tee that one up?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, these conservation restrictions have all been fully reviewed and vetted by Town Council's office, and in particular, Associate Town Council Pat Harris has reviewed and worked with the 300 Committee as well on the development of these restrictions, and Town Council recommends favorable action on all three.
Sam?
Can I ask a question, and this may be just an edit or something, but at the bottom of page 1, it refers to, will advance the following policies and objectives, and there's nothing that follows in the way of a list. There's a whole series of sightings, and I was looking for it and was curious to know why it wasn't part of the text.
I think, didn't they give us a sort of truncated summary instead of the...
I see.
That's right.
I think because they said it was too voluminous to put into this, so...
In the main
I've looked at it
document was
before.
Just had the cover pages transmitted, just out
I'm
of convenience.
comfortable with
That's correct. In that case,
I move approval?
it.
I'm sorry, did you move approval?
No, go. Second.
Okay.
all those in favor?
Aye. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have whether to approve town WQMC partnering with Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution, WHOI, to apply for an EPA SNEP grant to install a demonstration permeable reactive barrier at 0 Shorewood Drive. Is there anyone here from WHOI? Hi, welcome. Please come up and just give us a snapshot if you would.
You want the 1 minute version or the 2 or the 3 minute
I'd like
version?
the one tonight unless
Okay.
there's questions.
Sounds good.
I think we trust you.
Matt Charette, I'm a scientist at WHOI, Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution, and also a member of the Water Quality Management Committee for the past 3 years. And I'm here tonight seeking partnership with the town and also the Water Quality Management Committee on an application to the EPA to install and a demonstration project for a permeable reactive barrier on town-owned parcel 0 Shorewood Drive in East Falmouth, Massachusetts. And the main partnership with the town would be obviously the use of the land for the demonstration project, but also using the Water Quality Management Committee as sort of an advisory board for the project as it proceeds. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Appreciate that partnership opportunity. We're very familiar with permeable barriers. Are there any specific questions from the board?
Just
one
Doug?
quick question. Is it still going to be the injected style?
Correct. The carbon source that would be used is food grade emulsified vegetable oil that would be injected.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
No, just a thank you for pursuing this. I'll move approval.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very
Thanks
much.
for your support.
Thanks, Matt.
Appreciate
Thank
it.
you, Matt.
Next, we have on the agenda whether to approve an Eversource Energy petition to install 1 4-inch conduit and 2 handholds on Walden Avenue, west of Grand Avenue.
Do we have any from Eversource here?
To my knowledge, no. I'm not aware of any Eversource representatives attending.
Because last time we had an application, I was hoping we could get someone from Eversource here eventually. We did not approve that one at that time. That one has not come back to us.
Correct.
I hope they did not proceed and actually put it in without the approval. They came back a week later with the one that was actually serving the benefit of the homeowner only. I just don't know how we actually get Eversource to respond to our request to, do we know that Lakeview Avenue is completed?
I have not been out to Lakeview recently. I know when I was out there about 6 weeks ago, there were still 3 poles that were to be relocated, and I haven't gotten an updated report on that since that time.
Could I ask a question? I mean, can we send a letter to them indicating that I'm not saying that we tell them we're not going to allow any further, because I know sometimes these affect individuals, but to invite them to an upcoming meeting and put it as an agenda item?
I like that idea. In fact, I've met the new person that's in control, essentially, of community relations. I'm sure Julian is familiar with him as well. Let's just ask, set an agenda item, invite him to the meeting, and ask for what would be a more suitable and efficient procedure, since we do tend to have a lot of problems come up, and the board's uncomfortable with continuing to approve items when there are outstanding issues.
Happy to prepare such a letter if the board so concurs.
An invitation, yep.
With maybe an update on Lakeview. Maybe we can ask
Exactly.
that person to come and specifically update us on the project.
Do we need a motion for that?
Well, not for that, but we do have outstanding this request with respect to Walden Avenue.
I move that we delay all these approvals until we get somebody here from Eversource.
And none of these, correct, are to specific homeowners, correct?
They are.
Some other service improvements.
Yeah, I'm reluctant to second your motion because we don't know the impact. I hate to handicap somebody's building project or hold it up. It could cost them considerable amount of money.
I just wonder if that's the incentive that Eversource needs to, we've asked, we keep saying it.
Well, I would prefer to see if we get a response from this letter. And
I'll withdraw
if we
my
don't,
motion.
then maybe we can do that in the future. But I'd like to see the diplomatic effort first before we start stonewalling private property.
I withdraw my motion.
In that case, with respect to Walden Avenue,
I'll move approval.
Second?
all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We'll take the next 3 together. The approval of Eversource Energy petition to install 1 4-inch conduit and 1 handhole, number 6, H68A on Sippawisset Road, opposite Upland Avenue. Approve Eversource Energy petition to install 1 4-inch conduit and 1 handhole, number 78 H1A on Nye Road, south of Main Street. Approve Eversource Energy petition to install 1 4-inch conduit and 1 handhole, number 280 H1A on Belvedere Road.
I just want to add,
1 minute, Doug first?
well, after discussion,
All right, and so Sam moved, who's second?
Second?
I just had a discussion to note that the engineering has recommended all 4 of these.
Exactly.
Right.
Yep.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, thank you.
Madam Chair, by consensus, then, we'll prepare that letter.
Right, and
was
an
commented on?
invitation to come to the board.
Very good, okay.
And if they don't show up, we're going to stop paying our bills.
Okay, no time for levity today.
Okay.
Next, we have a vote on whether to accept a donation from the Newcomers Club of Falmouth in the amount of $500 to the Falmouth Recreation
I
Department.
move we accept the donation.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, newcomers. Next, we have designation of members of the Charter Review Committee as special municipal employees for the purposes of the Conflict of Interest Law. This is an administrative formality. Is there a motion?
I move that we designate members of the Charter Review Committee as special municipal employees.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Next, we have a retroactive approval of a letter of support for an application of state municipal vulnerability preparedness grant program funding. Doug, did you want to say something about
Yeah,
this?
this is just a reference that we voted at our last meeting to support the Coastal Resiliency Action Committee's grant application with using the $80,000 they had on hand to apply for $240,000 more. And they, it seemed like it would be good to have a letter to clarify that to go with the grant. So this just is what that letter is for.
And given that,
I move approval.
Second?
all those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Retroactive.
Next, we have whether to approve a water main easement on Lower East Falmouth. Mr. Suso, do you want to tee that up?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This has been brought forward by Town Council Frank Duffy with a recommendation that board consider favorable action on it.
Are there any questions or any motion?
Move approval.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have under special events, a new recommended event, the Falmouth Water Stewards Water Bottle Refill Station Celebration at Peg Noonan Park on Saturday, June 16, 2018, from 11 to 11:30 a.m.
Alan's here. You want to let him just,
Sure, please.
just as a way of an announcement? I think it's
I think
good
we've done
timing.
last week, but, yeah.
Thank you all. I'm here on behalf of the Falmouth Water Stewards and our Refill Reuse Falmouth initiative. The new water stations have been delivered. They're at the water department. And we have scheduled the June 16th at 11 o'clock for the celebration of the new water stations. It'll be a short celebration, short ceremony, where we'll have several people give very short speeches. All of you will be invited, and we'd like a representative of the selectmen to participate in the speechifying, albeit short. We are very happy that there's another event in the library area at the same time. The Falmouth Arts Alliance is having their 3-day event. So we actually are meeting with them tomorrow, a representative from them tomorrow, Judith Courier, to talk about how we can get some synergies with the people that are coming to their event and the celebration of this water station, which will be providing water for refilling water bottles as a water fountain and a place for dogs to drink. I've got an additional request in addition to your approval of the application, and that is a waiver of the fee for this application as well as our previously approved application for the signage.
That'll be on a separate agenda item.
Oh, okay.
The fee waiver. But thank you for all of your work. Appreciate the announcement. I know this is something the board's been in support of, and you've been really doing a ton of work putting it together, and look forward to seeing that.
And the timeline is impressive. From when you first started talking about it to it actually being done is really unbelievable.
Great.
So.
Well, thank you. It's been a team effort.
I didn't hear you say Peg Noonan Park, though, but that's the location.
Oh, yes, thank you. Thank you, Sam. It's Peg Noonan Park.
Great.
Thank you, Alan.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
So we already voted it, right?
Correct. Next, we have.
No, I don't think
No,
so.
we
I don't think you took
all
the
right,
vote.
then I'll take a motion.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Next, we have on the agenda a wedding ceremony, D'Amatos at Falmouth Heights Beach on Sunday, June 3rd.
I move approval after hearing from all the pertinent departments that no one has a problem with it.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Also, coming up in 2 weeks.
That's right.
Yes.
And this
Summer's here.
is perfect timing for the next agenda item, which is a public hearing. We have an application for an alteration of premises for an all-alcohol package store license, Falmouth Wine and Spirits, 322 Palmer Avenue, Falmouth. Is the applicant here? Hello, Ms. Moynihan.
Hello, Madam Chair. For the record, I'm Laura Moynihan, attorney representing the applicant corporation, who's the licensee, and with me is Jay Headland, who's the principal of the corporation in the back there, smiling away. This is an application to alter the licensed premises at Falmouth Wine and Spirits, 322 Palmer Avenue. All the butters have been notified. You have in your file my affidavit along with the green cards. And Jay it's a very simple application. She's just looking to add 437 square feet of area within the same building.
Before we go with that, though, I want to read the hearing notice. But yeah, I appreciate the background. Notice is hereby given under Chapter 138 of the General Laws as amended. The Falmouth Wine and Spirits, Inc. has applied for an alteration of licensed premises of its all-alcohol package store license located at 322 Palmer Avenue, Falmouth, Mass. A hearing will be held in the Selectmen's Meeting Room, Falmouth Town Hall, on Monday, May 21st at 7:30 p.m. on the above application. This was published Friday, May 4th, 2018 in the Falmouth Enterprise. Copy to abutters. Thank you.
It's my haste to help you move your agenda along.
I appreciate that.
Anyway, so she's looking to add 437 square feet within the same building for sales and wine tasting. Right now, the store is 1,531 square feet. She's operated there since 2001, 17 years. Is well established in the community. I think has a very good track record with her license. So that's essentially it. We're looking for your approval to expand the license to that additional space. It's shown on the floor plan that you have in the file. And as I said, all the abutters have been notified.
Do you have that floor plan? Because it didn't come in our packet. I'm just curious as to whether there is that space as you go in the door to the left that's been open for a while. Is that just the space that's going to be now available for alcohol sales, or is there additional space?
This is the plan here. Oh, good, that's helpful.
Should be in your file. This is the space here. You can come in the front door of the existing space. There's open space, and then it's an additional room.
So this has not been a space that's been used before. This has been
Correct.
used previously,
Correct.
but now this will be additional to that. Okay.
We don't have that. Yeah, we don't have it, so thank you. Any other questions?
Questions?
Is there anyone here who would like to speak in favor of this license application? Is there anyone here who would like to speak against this license application?
I move we close the hearing.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
And what is the,
I move approval.
I'll second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Best of luck with the project.
Thank you very
Nice
much.
presentation, thank you.
No. Public number 7.
I was looking for something quick, that's a good one. We're going to move to business number 7, annual reappointment of Inspector of Animals. Mr. Suso, do you want to?
Yes,
Run
Madam
through
Chair,
this?
I believe when the board made your annual reappointments the last time, our recently hired health agent, Scott McGann, was not included in that list, so we bring Scott's name to you for consideration for appointment.
I move approval.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Licenses? Number 9.
All right, and next we'll have under number 9, whether to approve a 2018 seasonal annual license renewal, common victualler license for Smitty's Homemade Ice Cream, 326 East Falmouth Highway. Also the lodging house license for Captain Tom Lawrence House Inn at 75 Locust Street, and the secondhand dealer's license for Cape Cod Gold and Silver Coin at 424 Main Street.
Move approval?
Second. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Institution.
You.
Should we try minutes?
Can we do some minutes? I think we have.
That's ambitious,
Three more
okay.
minutes? 3 more minutes?
No, I think we're close enough, actually.
Okay.
Just kind of, let's see here. Is this one? That's the next one. All right. Next, we have on the agenda an application for transfer an all-alcohol common victualler license, entertainment license, and Sunday entertainment license for Shen Wang, DBA New Peking Palace, 452 Main Street, Falmouth. Is the applicant here?
Yes.
Welcome. Hi.
Hi, everybody. My name is Chris Coleman. I'm attorney for the applicant.
Welcome, Chris.
Thank you very much.
Welcome. I'm going to read the notice. Notice is hereby given under Chapter 138 of the General Laws as amended that Sheng Wan, Inc., DBA New Peking Palace, has applied for a transfer of ownership of an all-alcohol common victual license located at 452 Main Street, Falmouth, Mass. Application has also been made for an entertainment license and a Sunday entertainment license. A hearing will be held in the Selectmen's Meeting Room, Falmouth Town Hall, on Monday, May 21st, 2018, at 7:40 p.m. on the above application. Publication date was Friday, May 4th, 2018, in the Falmouth Enterprise. Hi, could you tell us a little bit about what you're asking for?
Of course. What you see there is largely going to stay the same. There's a change in the ownership structure. As you can see before from the prior owners, it's about 7 or 8 owners. 3 of them are going to jump out, another 3 are going to jump in, and their percentages are going to be slightly different. So on the advice of their accountant, they said, look, you just better, you start with a fresh corporation and go from there. So that's really the basis for the transfer. Hours of operation still the same. Sunday through Thursday, 11:30 to 10. Friday and Saturday, 11:30 to 11 p.m. I have with me Annie Ying Zing also. She is the current manager. She's going to stay the manager. Sharon is there as well. She's still going to be at the restaurant and going to be there for a while. She's got good experience. I think she's become a better manager over time. Learn on the job kind of, and that's kind of what she did. So I think her experience is good. She's going to be there 40 hours plus. She's at her tips training, and they actually do a pretty good job there, given especially the seasonal nature of the location. They have tips trainers come in like every couple of years and just kind of go over everything with everybody. I think it makes some sense for them to do that. She is a U.S. citizen as well. The entertainment is just the television and the background music, nothing more than that. And that's what it is now. That's what it will remain. And the name will change also from Gourmet Garden to New Peking Palace. I guess it was Peking Palace before. It's going to be new. Any questions? Be happy to answer.
Nice presentation. Questions from the board?
Nope.
No. Is there anyone here who would like to speak in favor of this application? Seeing none. Is there anyone here who would like to speak against this application? Seeing
Move
none.
we close the hearing.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any discussion by the board?
No.
Good reason to clap.
Nice to see the old name is back.
That's what you said you'd say.
Is there a motion?
I move approval.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody.
Very good.
Thank you.
Okay, I wonder, is Frank here?
Yeah, Frank's here.
Let's see, we have 10 minutes. I would make, Frank, would you mind coming up? We're going to skip to number 1 on the 810 business, which is a discussion of review procedures for waiver requests under the flow neutral bylaw.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Frank Duffy. I'm town council. I've been asked to come here tonight just to briefly discuss the flow neutral bylaw, in part because you have a hearing tonight, which I think will start in about 20 minutes or so. And it's the first time you've been asked to apply the flow neutral bylaw. So we really have no track record or experience. We are also aware that the Board of Selectmen is looking for some guidelines or to help you with policy to decide how to grant variances under the flow neutral bylaw. So I thought I'd just give a little overview because the public doesn't have any idea what we're doing either. It's new for them as well. In 2013, the town adopted what's called a flow neutral bylaw, which relates to wastewater. And it's based upon the fact that there's a limited treatment and discharge capacity at the wastewater treatment plant up on Blacksmith Shop Road. So the bylaw applies to all present sewer service areas of the town, but it doesn't apply to New Silver Beach, which has its own bylaw. But as you know, Main Street is now been redesignated by recent town meeting action a business redevelopment district. There are some parcels down on Main Street that are undergoing revitalization. They're being redeveloped. And the flow neutral bylaw comes into play, because whenever you have residential and non-residential development, there are certain triggers that trigger the requirement for a variance from the Board of Selectmen. Specifically, the one you're going to have tonight is a non-residential development, and it's a combination of existing redevelopment, because there is a building there, it's a former bank, and you also have a new development, it's an empty lot that some time ago was a motel. But if, in the case of existing development, if the new use or change of use would result in a flow of sewage of more than 10% of that which was experienced on January 1, 2014, then there's a requirement for a variance to add the additional flow, and that variance comes from the Board of Selectmen. In the case of new development, which would be the empty lot, you're allowed a flow of 110 gallons per 10,000 square feet of lot area by right, but if you exceed that 110 gallons per 10,000 square feet of lot area, then you have to have a variance from the Board of Selectmen. Now, the variance provision is within the bylaw. It's section 18056. And first of all, it requires you to hold a public hearing, which you're doing tonight, or at least you're starting the hearing tonight. There is a requirement that there be notice published, and the notice must be published in a newspaper, which it has been. And it's also to be posted by the town clerk, which it has been, and the notice must be at least 14 days before the date of the hearing, which I understand is all taking place according to the bylaw. Now, there are two findings that the board has to make under the flow neutral bylaw. The first is you have to determine that sufficient capacity exists at the treatment facility, and that is determined by the wastewater superintendent. So there will be represented to you tonight a report from the wastewater superintendent concerning the capacity at the site. The second...
Frank, before you move on, what are the means by which the superintendent determines capacity? What statute does the superintendent look at?
In place, there's a discharge permit, and if you'll excuse me, I don't know the exact numbers, but say there's like so many gallons that the wastewater treatment plant is allowed to discharge. That means go into the groundwater. And the reason for the discharge permit here, of course, is that anything that goes into our groundwater eventually winds up either in our drinking water or in our coastal waters, our ponds, our embayments, and so forth. So the Department of Environmental Protection strictly regulates the total amount of effluent that can be discharged by the treatment plant. Now, of course, what the rule in sewer, I understand, is what goes in must come out. So if you increase the flow in, you're going to increase the flow out. So this is all done by mathematical calculation. They know what the flow was, say, on the critical date of January 1, 2014. That could be measured by meters. And the flow out could also be measured. So the parameters are known. And it's if the amount of flow going into the wastewater treatment plant is producing less discharge than the permit allows, then you have capacity. And that is how the wastewater superintendent would make that determination.
So it's entirely objective. It's not subjective.
That is objective. That's a number. It can be presented to you. It might be controversial.
But it isn't a straight 100% discharge. We actually, if we get to in 70% or 80%, other things are then triggered. So
well, actually,
there are cutoffs before we...
That's true, Mr. Jones. You have a situation where you have an upper limit to the discharge, but at various stages along the way, at various increments, you have to make reports to the Department of Environmental Protection. And when you get close to the discharge limit, you then have to stop, basically, and you have to make plans for how you're going to handle increased flow, either by expanding the plant or whatever else you're going to do.
So when we're talking about sufficient capacity, it's hitting those numbers, not...
Right. It's not hitting the absolute end number,
right,
but it's incrementally getting to it that you're trying to...
And that's the very reason the board has been asking for guidelines, so that well before we even get near the numbers, we have parameters by which to act.
Right.
Madam Chair, could I just interject? You have a copy of a report from our wastewater superintendent, Amy Lowell, confirming that the maximum permitted amount is 710,000 gallons per day, and her calculation, including the proposed flow from this development, is that the total flow, even with this included and all other proposed flows, which have been brought to her attention on Main Street, would reach 585,000 gallons per day. This permitted amount to which you refer is 80%. Once the 80% level is reached, what is triggered is a report to the DEP indicating what the town's intentions are going forward. And of course, long before that would occur, we have to enter into negotiations with the state on a successor discharge permit, which would become effective. Our current permit only goes until the end of December of 2019. So that is all fully contemplated going forward, and it is further articulated in Amy Lowell's memorandum to the board. I just thought it would be helpful to interject that.
Right, but she'll be here so that
She
the
will
board
be.
can examine her when we're ready for her report.
Do we have to
Sam,
break?
do you have a question?
Well, I do have, looking for advice, because it seems to me where we have a developer coming in like this particular developer, and from what I'm told, it's going to be a good community citizen, they're going to increase the employment needs of the company,
Right.
of the town. And we're already facing a housing shortage, right? And the only way we get affordable housing is by subsidizing it with public money. And so it's bothering me that we're actually increasing the demand for public investment in affordable housing through some developments or something like that. And on the other hand, we're going to give away a significant amount of treatment capacity. So the question I have is why we wouldn't require this developer that apparently could put a Title V system and potentially even some denitrifying capability into it, so that they are essentially investing in their own water treatment, or give us some affordable housing units as part of their development project as a sort of a mixed-use development. So they kind of offset some of the costs that we know we're going to be facing as we're struggling to meet the affordable housing. I know that the salaries that they're going to pay for a lot of their staff, they're not going to be able to afford to rent or own in Falmouth.
So I'm going to leave everyone on the edge of their seats with that excellent and very, very important question, because we're now at our time for our hearing. So I appreciate that, but I want to stick to the process with respect to the hearing, and Sam, that is the key question. If town council wouldn't mind sticking around for the next item.
Of course.
Thank you very much. We next have on the agenda an application for installation of above-ground storage tank for number 2 diesel and gasoline, Brewer Fiddler's Cove Marina at 42 Fiddler's Cove Road. Is the applicant here? And I'll read the hearing notice. Welcome. Notice is hereby given that a public hearing will be held on Monday, May 21st, 2018 at 7:50 p.m. in the Selectmen's Meeting Room, Town Hall, Falmouth, Mass. on the application of THO of Massachusetts, Inc., DBA Brewer Fiddler's Cove Marina for permission to remove 2 6,000-gallon underground storage tanks, UST, and install 1 12,000-gallon 2-compartment above-ground storage tank, AST, 6,000-gallon marine diesel fuel, and 6,000-gallon marine gasoline to be located at 42 Fiddler's Cove Road, North Falmouth, Mass. 02556. The publication date was Friday, May 4, 2018, in the Enterprise, with copy to abutters. Welcome, sir. Please introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Mark Smith. I'm an engineer with CMG Environmental, and I'm working with Brewers on the tank replacement. And as it said in the announcement, they currently are licensed for a 6,000-gallon underground diesel tank and a 6,000-gallon underground gasoline tank. And the marinas across the country are getting all the underground tanks out of the ground, and we're proposing to replace it with a single above-ground tank, same capacity, double-wall tank, fire-rated, in the same part of the yard as the current tanks, actually moving it a little bit further from the property line towards the parking lot. A tank of this capacity needs a state fire marshal approval, so we prepared what's called the FP 101, which is basically the state fire marshal's application to install the tank. and it requires 2 local signatures, the fire marshal, and I believe he signed off, and then he brought it over to the town manager's office for your approval. We do have Conservation Commission approval, and if you approve us this evening, we will forward it on to the state fire marshal.
Mr. Suso, can you confirm the fire chief's approval? Unless you have a copy. We do have a copy.
Thank you, Doug.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions from the board?
I think this is actually a good thing that we get this above ground so we don't have leakages that we can't detect and remediate immediately. So, I move approval.
Well,
Oh, we have to close the
we're just
hearing.
going to, sure. Any other questions, Doug?
Well,
How's it secured to the concrete pad? Is it a heavy-duty connection there?
Yeah, we have to look at the flood zone we're in, and we are in a flood zone, but all the fittings, et cetera, pumps, everything on top of the tank, that's, above the flood zone. But, so we figured a buoyancy, and it's anchored to a concrete slab with, I think it's 1 1/4 inch anchor bolts, and the slab is sized to anchor the tank with a 1.5 safety factor, 100-year flood with the tank empty.
Okay.
Interesting. Is there anyone here who'd like to speak in favor of this application? Seeing none. Is there anyone here who would like to speak against this application? Seeing none.
I guess I do have one more question for the applicant. What sort of a protection will there be for visibility of this?
It's basically on the edge of the parking lot. So I haven't spoken to the marina about it, but they could put a fence, et cetera. It's 8 foot diameter, I believe. So there was not a lot of screening, but it faces the marina's parking lot.
But certainly the underground tanks weren't seen, but this will be quite visible for our neighbors in the area.
Yeah, I believe, and I may have to bring Fred Sorrento up here, but they have been having some discussions with the closest to budding neighbors in regards to screening. When we went to Conservation Commission, there was discussion about that. And so the tank, currently, the above ground tanks are sort of mounded up. I think they did that to get them up out of the flood a little bit. So we're moving down towards the parking lot level, leaving a slope and landscaping between the tank and the neighbors. So really the screening for the neighbors will be primarily plantings. And I just kind of look over for a nod, but I believe you're working with the neighbors on the plantings, or?
Correct.
Sir, we have to have you come to the mic, sorry, for the folks at home. And if you would, just for the record, introduce yourself. Thank you.
My name is Fred Sorrento. I'm the general manager of Brewer Fiddler's Cove Marina in North Falmouth. The discussion has been for plantings or trees of, arborvitae type, or a tasteful screening fence to get this out of the view of the parking lot area, and any surrounding plantings that we need to do to keep the neighbors where they would like to see it. So,
What kind of security fencing is there against, for example, some kind of attractive nuisance or any kind of tampering? Is there protection for that type of risk?
Yeah, there's whatever security the marina has. The tank itself is pretty tamper-proof. It is double-walled. It has a 3-inch layer of concrete between the 2 layers of the tanks. And when the power is shut off, and I mentioned all the fittings and everything were up above, if you broke a pipe or something like that, or even if you drilled through the entire, outside of the tank, it can't leak unless you, somehow got into the second layer, which would be quite a task. You'd be there a while. And so as long as the power is shut off, so no one can turn on a pump or anything like that, and I believe all your powers are in locked buildings. It's very secure.
Any other questions, Sam?
Is this in the velocity zone? The tank?
No, it's just in the AE zone.
Because I know that conservation would have an issue with any kind of a fence that might get moved by flooding and knock over somebody else's property. So Doug, they're between a rock and a hard place. Probably the natural plantings are the better solution.
I would go with the plantings. I would rather see that solution as well.
And I think there was some planting specified by conservation.
Yep.
Right. Any other questions at all? In that case, what's the board's preference?
I would move approval.
Close the hearing. I move to close the hearing.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye. And now I move approval.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Nice job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
One question real quick?
Sure.
Because the original form does require a local signature, so I just didn't know how that gets managed. Is that something I should follow up on?
I just tend to sign where, right there. It's all set. You'll get a copy or whichever you need, the original from the town manager's office tomorrow.
Thanks a lot.
Sure. I could just go, can you sure? Thank you. Probably I did that. Are the folks here from La France? Hi. Okay, next we're going to call the, let's see here, the 8 o'clock on the flow neutral bylaw, evaluation of request for variance, 763 Main Street and 24 Scranton Ave, preliminary review of flow neutral bylaw from town council will be at the end. So first I'll read the hearing notice. Notice is hereby given that the Board of Selectmen of the Town of Falmouth will hold a public hearing on Monday, May 21st, 2018 at 8 o'clock p.m. in the Selectmen's Meeting Room, Town Hall, Falmouth, Mass. on the application of La France Hospitality Court for a wastewater flow variance under Chapter 180, Section 56 of the Code of Falmouth, the so-called flow neutral bylaw, for a proposed hotel development at the intersection of Main Street and Scranton Ave in said Falmouth, parcels 47B, 09013-022, and 47B, 09010-002. The publication dates for Friday, May 4, 2018, in the Falmouth Enterprise. Mr. Ahmed, welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, members of the board. I'm Bob Ament. I'm a Falmouth attorney, and I represent La France Hospitality Corporation tonight. With me is Sean La France, who's right here. Sean is the Director of Facilities for La France, which owns about a dozen hotels in Massachusetts, elsewhere in New England, and in Florida. It's a family business. Also with me is my partner, attorney Kevin Clower here, and Mark Bogosian, whose company Longfellow Design has been assisting La France in the design effort, and Mark hopes to be able to build the facility if it gets all of the approvals. I believe that this is the first hearing that the selectmen have ever held under the flow neutral bylaw, so you're breaking some new ground tonight. The flow neutral bylaw is intended to help the town allocate a scarce resource, that is the capacity for the sewer system. And if one does more than a certain amount of minimal development on a piece of property that's in the sewer district, the proponent is required to come seek a variance from the selectmen. And the selectmen need to have received a referral from the wastewater superintendent, Amy Lowell, that there is sufficient capacity for the request, and you have received that referral from Amy. And you also need to receive a referral from the Board of Health stating that if a Title V system was allowed to be constructed on the site, that is, if we were not in the sewer district, the sufficient Title V system could be installed on the lot, given the size of the lot, the environmental characteristics, and so on, so that the sewer isn't a device to be used to expand development. It's obviously to take care of development that otherwise would be allowed and would contribute nutrients to, in this case, Falmouth Inner Harbor. So we have had a hearing before the Board of Health, and the Board of Health has reviewed plans for a septic system that could be installed on the site, plans prepared by Cape and Islands Engineering. And you have the referral from the health agent stating that the Board of Health has determined that capacity requested could be installed on site. As a matter of fact, what Cape and Islands Engineering did was try to show what the maximum development could be on the site, and they showed that under Title V you could have, I think it was around 13,600 gallons per day. Our request, in fact, is not for that. Our request is somewhat less. It's for about 11,900 gallons per day, which would be the sewage flow from I think it was a 78-room motel and a approximately 100-seat restaurant. The exact numbers of rooms have not been determined, but it would be less than 80, and the exact number of restaurant seats in a restaurant haven't been determined for sure. So what would be the considerations that the Board of Selectmen might make in granting the variance as requested? It might include whether the project has public benefits. I think that it's pretty well recognized that a new hotel in town would be beneficial to the tourist community, to business, to residents. There hasn't been a new hotel in decades. This proposed 70-some room hotel would be a significant addition to that market. Just for comparison, the Admiralty Hotel down the street has 98 rooms. The Holiday Inn on Jones Road has 98 rooms. The Falmouth Inn, almost across Main Street from our site, has, I believe, just over 100 rooms. So this is a bit smaller than those other facilities, but it's as many hotel rooms as we think we can put on the site with the parking and so on. The use is something that benefits the public. The location is the right location at the corner of Scranton and Main Street, near the Inner Harbor, across the street from the rec facility, the future senior center, on Main Street, near restaurants and so on. So location is right. There are public benefits. As we said in correspondence, we anticipate that the tax revenue from this facility, because there will be room taxes and as well as real estate taxes, and not counting meals taxes, just those hotel taxes, room tax, and real estate taxes, we anticipate would exceed $200,000 a year. And that could pay for an awful lot of sewer upgrade financing if that should ever be necessary in the future. This project is not located next to any residential properties. We don't anticipate opposition to it. Town meeting recently was aware of what this project was and approved a couple of zoning amendments that were needed in order to go forward. The project requires approval by the Cape Cod Commission as a development of regional impact, as a special permit from the Zoning Board of Appeals, site plan review from the Planning Board, and we will be back to the Selectmen asking for your municipal endorsement to the Cape Cod Commission when we have furthered our plans and are about ready to submit to the Cape Cod Commission. So, many benefits to this project. It seems to be something well supported in the right place, and we hope that you'll allow us to hook up to the sewer, because it's the only way we're going to get this new hotel built in Falmouth. I'd be happy to answer any questions. Sean LaFrance is here to answer any questions as well.
Appreciate the information, and we're definitely cognizant of the special aspects of this project, and this being sort of a case of first impression with respect to the sewer capacity. The board has, for quite a while, been asking and looking for parameters from the staff in terms of guidance and a policy level of dealing with the capacity. So that's, you're kind of coming at the exact same time, so this is a great project to look at in that light. Are there any particular questions for Attorney Ahmed or from the Doug?
Well, the first question would be, if you have room for a Title V septic, and we're not talking about an impaired watershed that's under DEP, total maximum daily load, why would the sewer be the only way for your project to go forward?
Well, when you're in the sewer district, you can't put in a Title V system. You're required to hook up to the sewer.
Unless we say otherwise, is that correct?
It's this waiver.
I'm not sure there is a waiver process, but we haven't considered that possibility. I simply don't know the answer to your question. We've always assumed that we have to hook up to the sewer and that these things are regulated by state and federal law. Perhaps Attorney Duffy, who was here a moment ago, has an opinion about that, or maybe Mr. Suso knows, but I don't have the answer for you.
Or we can certainly ask for that opinion, but while we have Bob, Sam, and then Megan?
Yeah, I don't think you were in the room when I raised the issue when Attorney Duffy was kind of giving us an overview on the flow-neutral bylaw, but the thing that's I'm struggling with is we have this affordable housing issue, and as we want to develop this end of Main Street, there's no question about it. And from everything we've heard, you guys are good corporate citizens in the communities where you have run your businesses. Our problem is that you're going to create an employment need, and your salaries aren't going to be able to pay enough for those employees to either rent or live in Falmouth. And the burden to create affordable housing then falls on the town to subsidize developments in order to be able to give year-round housing. And so, of course, some of that sewer reserve capacity we're thinking about in terms of multifamily housing that would get to use that sewer and not require special sewage treatment, package treatment systems, and that sort of thing. So I'm seeing this as a town investment that we're going to have to make to expand the sewer system, knowing full well that the state is essentially holding us back and saying, wait a minute, you're only allowed to go to a certain level, and then we have to look at things like outfalls to handle the effluent that we, after we treat the sewage in the treatment system, treatment plant. So we're kind of caught in a place where what we really are trying to do is provide enough affordable housing for workforce housing. And really now it's become literally 100% of average median income all the way down because we have people coming into town who can't afford to live here because they can't make enough money with the incomes that they actually have through employment. So, I mean, one of the goals of the planning board is mixed use, where people get a chance to live and work in the same development. And I didn't know whether you had considered that at all, whether actually providing some sort of on-site housing for your employees, because that would certainly help us a bit in terms of justifying, allocating a precious resource, and that's our ability to handle treated sewage in considering your application here.
Mr. Ahmed.
Well, as I mentioned, the project is subject to the Cape Cod Commission, and the Cape Cod Commission requirements will include a substantial contribution, a cash contribution towards affordable housing. That's not a very complete answer to your question, but in fact there will be a substantial payment because of that. Affordable housing should be close to work, of course, but it isn't restricted by the zoning in the town. The location of this hotel and the nature of it is in the appropriate location, properly zoned, and the business redevelopment district, which extends down Main Street, just along Main Street on each side of the road, specifically contemplates this kind of appropriate development. Certainly it's a goal to create jobs, and this project will create jobs, both some permanent jobs and also construction jobs. And people also need a place to live, but every project isn't going to include the housing, particularly on relatively small properties, that right on Main Street where this is the appropriate use. I think it's difficult to imagine that for a hotel use, and that's a use that we do need in town, that there are going to be affordable housing on top of the hotel, for instance. It isn't the right mix of uses for the site or for the town. Keep in mind that there is an existing fairly large bank building over 3,000 square feet on the site. It already uses some sewer flow. Keep in mind also that there was a 29-room motel right behind the hotel, which is the same property. That project was on the sewer. That project also was approved for another 29 rooms.
Mr. Rahman, on those numbers, is that about a third of what you're requesting now? I'm trying to remember what, compared to what those numbers compared to what you're asking.
It's the 29 would be compared to 71 rooms, so correct.
Plus the restaurant.
A little bit less than a third, plus the restaurant, but that didn't count the bank building, which could be used for a variety of things. But I think a third of it is a good round figure for how much already exists. So the addition is a relatively small percent, quite a small percent, of the available sewage flow according to the memo that you've received from Amy Lowell. And I think that it is significant that with income of $200,000 a year to the town, every year, year after year, that money can go towards expansion of a sewer plant, affordable housing. I don't think you should lose sight of that.
Ms. Braga.
I just want to clarify that number for the flow, is that when you take a look at what you anticipate for the entire year, is that peak flow? So in other words, that 13,000 or 11,000 that you're quoting, are you
Yes.
quoting that as peak flow? So that's what we would have in the summer and it would be much less in the winter? Or
That's peak daily flow, which is the design under Title V, because it's based on per bedroom. Those are figures which are probably significantly higher than what is actually results, because again, they are the peak design flow, and you have to design for more than you're likely to have. Maybe it would have been good to have Matt Costa from Cape and Islands Engineering here, because I think he would tell you that the flows are actually substantially less than the design flow.
Well, they're certainly going to be less at certain times of the year. I mean, if you're...
And I think you have to design for the maximum when you're talking Title V. You're saying, can the system you're designing, is it suitable for the maximum? So I think you're correct, and what you're getting at is that the
what's
flows
going
are
actually into our...
substantially
Yes.
less.
Right. And you're designing for a particular flow, but what's going to end up being utilized, in our numbers that we're allowed is going to fluctuate depending on the time of year.
Yes, but the maximum will be what we're designing
What you're capped
for.
at.
And what DEP is going to want.
Yep.
Any other questions for Mr. Rahman? Megan?
Well, maybe could Amy just, I know that she's here, I saw her come in, but when I'm looking at the language from the letter she noted, she says when actual average annual wastewater flow exceeds 80%, that's when DEP is triggered. So whatever number we come to for this project, if the waiver is allowed, the variance, is allowed, if that flow isn't, if it's, throughout the year, it's not at that level, I mean, it's actual flow, is that what you're saying?
No, what she's talking about is the percentages are based on projected, on other projects that are coming forward. So there are a bunch of projects that are in the pipeline,
right,
so to speak, that haven't actually gone online yet.
Right.
But when that number actually gets online, it's not what's calculated per day, it's when these other projects are all online, then we would be above that 80%.
If you look at those figures, it appears that there's, I don't have them right in front of me, actually I have them right in front of me, but somewhere here. It's about 130,000 gallons is the available number. That would be sufficient for approximately 1,300 bedrooms. The point is, there's plenty of capacity available for affordable housing projects.
Since she's here, Amy, would you speak to that? The several questions that have come up. Thank you.
Hi, Amy Lowell, Town's wastewater superintendent. I guess I'll start with the question that you were just asking. The town's groundwater discharge permit is the primary limitation on the wastewater capacity, the town's wastewater capacity. And the discharge permit says that when we reach, when the actual annual flow, so we talk, in terms of our groundwater discharge permit, we're talking about average daily flow over the whole year. And when that number exceeds 80%, or reaches 80%, we'll call it, reaches 80% of the discharge that we're allowed, then we must prepare and submit a plan to the state saying what our plans are to handle future flows.
Quick clarification. I see in the report, it says projected wastewater flow is now, then there's a little sign that I would think means greater than 80% of the permitted discharge flow. How does that comport with the fact that you keep saying when that happens?
That's projected.
Okay,
Right, so it is.
Yeah, give me that timing. If
It's, right, so last year, in 2017, the average annual flow to the wastewater plant was 390,000 gallons per day. Our discharge permit sets that number, the average average daily flow that we can receive at the plant, discharge from the plant, to 710,000 gallons per day. I'm not basing flow projections right now on what happened last year, however, because we're in a time of a great deal of change. The Little Pond Sewer Service Area project is coming online, and in 2017, only a small percentage of that was discharging into our system. This year, a lot more connections have been made. So what I'm now projecting that our flow from our existing sewer service area as it is now, plus the flow from the Little Pond Sewer Service Area as based on water use in that area, totals 515,000 gallons per day from those two things. Existing sewer service area flow plus Little Pond. Then you add in all the proposed projects that are on the table right now, including this one, Liberty Green as well, Spring Bars Road, the two Little Pond projects, what they're called. I've taken a survey, or gone around and looked at the plans for each of these projects that's on the table, and meaning by on the table I mean in various town review processes or in consideration right now, and those total about 70,000 gallons per day. So when I said 515 from existing plus Little Pond Sewer Service Area, plus 70 from all these projects that are on the table, that brings us up to about 585,000 gallons per day is what I'm projecting. That's the number that's in the memo. And that is slightly more, that projected number is slightly more than 80% of our discharge permit limit of 710,000 gallons per day. But the 80% sort of threshold is really it's a time when you reach that number, you need to begin to plan for your future capacity. As I said, the difference between what we had last year and this number that I'm projecting based on the available information is quite a bit, and it's based on assumptions for Little Pond Sewer Service Area, or build out of Little Pond Sewer Service Area plus the planned development.
The one on Gifford included in that?
Which on Gifford?
The Falmouth Housing Corporation, now 10 units. This is brand new.
That's not
no,
on the sewer
that's not
line.
on the sewer system.
Okay.
Yep.
And the other question is, when you say the predictions, what date would this be as of? In other words, when the projects that you've reviewed, which are on the sewer system, is it a year from now, it'll be 585? Is it?
Depends on when they.
So I'd say,
So I'm asking what.
I'd say the 515 number that I quoted is when Little Pond Sewer Service Area Project is, when all the connections have been made, which is supposed to be by spring of next year.
Okay.
So it'll be up to 515 approximately at that time. The 70,000 that I'm talking about in between really depends on what projects move forward over the next year. So I don't have a prediction on the timing of any of those projects. I don't know what's going to get approved and what's.
And our license expires in 2019 anyway. The chance that all these projects would be done by the end of next year is very slim.
Right. There's a lot on the table right now. This is in the time that I've worked for the town, there's more development within the sewer area being contemplated than in the 15 years previous that I've been
And
working.
Madam Chair, just to clarify, Amy's projections do include 3 existing affordable housing projects that are proposed but not functional.
The Helmus Circle project, which is also called Little Pond Village.
Right.
Little Pond Village
There
and
were
Little
two Little
Pond
Ponds you
Place.
Which is the Spring Bars
It includes
Road.
both
Yeah,
of
we got
those.
that.
It includes, the projects that have been proposed in the last couple of years that are in the various review stages, not all of which will necessarily occur, but which I think need to be taken into consideration in terms of where we are.
Other questions for Ms. Lowell, Sam?
Yes. When we hit this 70 or 80% and we have to come up with a plan, what are our options for increasing our discharge? Because I know the plant can handle more, but it's the question of the discharge. But of course, we're being limited by DEP's projection of just nitrogen loading to the ponds along the Buzzards Bay coast there. So what are our options in terms of increasing our capacity?
Well, that's a difficult question, and
I
we have begun we meaning the town's Water Quality Management Committee and the Department of Public Works and our consultant GHD have initiated the planning for the next phases of wastewater management, and that evaluation includes looking again at discharge locations and discharge capacity, because we will not be able to expand further in terms of wastewater collection beyond this 710,000 gallons per day unless we find another place or means of getting around this discharge issue. So either we look at sites, and we are going to be looking again at sites that have been considered previously, like the Augusta parcel, like the golf course parcel. The parcels that have been in consideration before as potential wastewater discharge sites will be under consideration again. We are looking again at the possibility of an outfall, seriously at the possibility of that. It's not I don't want to hold out hope for that, but it is a serious consideration. It is also possible to increase your discharge limit or reduce the limitations on your discharge by improving the level of treatment, which is an expensive and complicated endeavor, but compared to the expense of, say, an outfall, it starts to make sense to look at that. So we will also be looking at ways of potentially reducing further the nitrogen concentration in the effluent. So those are the kinds of things we're looking at.
Doug, and then Sam again.
So I would suggest that we look into whether or not it's practical, feasible, and environmentally advisable to have a Title V septic on this site, first of all, and then find out legally if we can go that route, if it's possible. Just to see.
I'm sorry.
No, that's good.
I heard that question come up before, and I can't answer it definitively, but it's my understanding that, well, so certainly in the town of Falmouth, the bylaw says if your property abuts the sewer, you need to connect to it. And there is state law equivalent to that. There are towns who have gotten special legislation to get exceptions to that. So I believe that that's the route we would have to take if that's where we want to go. But I would certainly, it's an important enough question that I don't want my answer here to be definitive on that. But I know, for example, Provincetown ended up getting what they called checkerboard legislation special legislation to allow them to cherry pick what they sewered because capacity was limiting. And other towns have done the same.
Sam?
Well, that's where my question is going to go, because we do have facilities that have a lot of people, a lot of discharge. Atria Woodbriar isn't quite close enough to hook up to our sewer, but it's right close to downtown. It's right off of Gifford Street and Jones Road, and they have a package treatment system on site. Seacrest, another resort hotel, they have a package treatment system on site. And I guess the question I have is, when we're limited in this way and we see a large amount of public investment, taxpayer money going towards something like that, why we shouldn't do it, you call it this patchwork method where we require on-site treatment. And I understand that you can actually get denitrifying as well. I think the engineer that installed the system for Atria Woodbriar claims that in fact he's getting denitrification out of his system as well, and you must know the answer to that question. But so we could not only take care of the Title V issue, but also cut back on the amount of nutrients that are going into, in this case it would be Falmouth Harbor. Is that a possibility?
So again, as I understand it, as the rules are now, this property would be required to connect to the sewer system. If those rules were changed, or if that's reevaluated, fine. The denitrifying, there are plenty of systems out there that can remove a substantial amount of nitrogen. In general, the more you centralize wastewater, the better and more consistent performance you can get. And so the performance from smaller individual systems is generally less reliable over time than a larger system. That's not universally true. I'm sure there are very well-run, successful small systems, but in general, the more flow you have, the more consistent your performance can be.
Megan? My only concern is, while I think it's, key to have the job development, the economic development, certainly this projection of the tax benefit to the town, but even at that large, what sounds like a large number of $200,000 a year, that's really small. I mean, we just did, our project was, in excess of $40 million. So, I just think that we have maybe a few more things to potentially look into, as far as I'm interested in this idea of whether or not that kind of checkerboard, setup is available to us. I don't know in terms of what that would require, but it sounds like it always would require some assistance from our state reps as well. But I do share some concerns about just getting to this. We're already projected to be at over 80%, and then our options are somewhat limited at that point.
Is there anyone among the board who feels ready to make a decision without continuing this and looking at the policy issues that we've been asking for more information?
Are there time constraints that we're under by bylaw?
I've been advised beforehand, no. Frank, do you want to speak to that? I can't even see him.
Can I just say to the applicant, we're not trying to discriminate against you personally. You realize that we're kind of up against a rock and a hard place. We have this huge, housing affordability issue that's getting worse. And the only way we can stem the flow is by investing taxpayer money to subsidize these housing units. And so this is going to make it actually even worse in that regard. And so when we have this limited sewage capacity, that's the thing we're struggling with. So, sorry, Frank, you wanted Frank to speak?
Yeah, I would just notice Frank's coming up. That I would just say my concern is slightly different than Sam's. It's not even so much about the affordable housing part. It's that if we're being told by Ms. Lowell that we are already with these projected projects and nothing else at that level, and what that then requires for the town, and then what our options are, which are, all of them very significant investments and timelines for the town. That's just my only, a little bit less. I understand the affordable housing piece of it, but it's more about our capacity and the requirements through DEP.
And the timeline and the time to get to raise the funds to do the projects.
To do the projects.
So Frank, what are the board's options?
At this point.
In terms of time, I know you had a restraint or condition on once the application is filed, the Board of Health has to make a determination within a certain 45 days, I think it is. I didn't see anything in there about a timeline on you, but one of the options that was discussed here is whether or not the board should require a Title V system on this property, because the Board of Health has determined that it is possible to put one in there. As Amy has related to you, and Mr. Ament alluded to you also, the bylaw, as is written now, requires you to hook up if you're in a sewer service area. And it does not give the Board of Selectmen or anybody else the power to waive that. So the power to waive a bylaw has to be explicit. You can't assume it, it's not assumed, or it's not an incidental power. It's got to be granted to you specifically. The idea of a checkerboarding sewer disposal system is something I had frankly never heard of until Amy just alluded to it a couple of minutes ago, but I really believe that would require special legislation. And in order to enact special legislation, you have to first have a town meeting vote, and you have to submit to the town meeting a proposed bylaw, which they approve, and then you as selectmen submit it to the legislature for action, and it'll get nowhere and get no traction whatsoever unless you have that town meeting vote. That's simply the way it goes.
Okay.
Probably the same issue with the bylaw.
I was really talking about at the moment. We were looking at continuance possibilities.
I don't see any problem with continuing it for 2 weeks, and we can, whether or not we'll have firm guidelines for you, I'm not sure. I know Mr. Suso has called several meetings. We've had several meetings. That is the various town departments that he is the summons to work on this. And as you can see from the discussion that you've had here tonight, there are a lot of moving parts and considerations. It's rather hard to wrap your arms around it totally, but we're definitely trying to do that.
Mr. Ahmed, did you want to speak to that? Do you want to look at the calendar, Julian?
Your next meeting will be June 4th,
And the one after?
June 18th.
Mr. Ahmed?
Well, first of all, we certainly don't have an objection to a continuance, either to June 14 or June 18th, although the sooner would be better. The sooner we can deal with this better. We've had to go to town meeting. This is a very long permitting process, and projects don't necessarily survive if they go on forever and ever. I'd like to respond to what Mr. Patterson said about the affordable housing. First of all, the problem that you're citing, Mr. Patterson, has nothing to do with the sewer district. That is the creation of a need for affordable housing and creating those units. Not only does it not have to do with the sewer district, it also isn't a criteria that's mentioned in the bylaw for you to consider whether you should grant a variance, in my opinion. I don't think you're between a rock and a hard place. I think you have an important decision to make, to take a couple more weeks, and you've already been working on it, of course. But what Amy Lowell is telling you is that with all of the development presently going on, which is in fact going to take some number of years to be built out, we will then be getting to the 80%. And that's with all the development going on now. So how many more years, decades even, will it be before we go from that 80% to another 20%, or actually increasing by 25%, the existing flows from the entire area of town that's served by the district? The hooking up of 1,000 or so homes in the Little Pond Sewer District, we're being told, wouldn't be as much as it would get us there. So I don't think you're between a rock and a hard place. Yes, this is the first case you've heard, but you're not getting close to that limit. Thanks.
Thank you. Doug, did you?
I just feel that before we make a decision on this case, we need to really have what our procedure is for the flow neutral bylaw in general. And we don't have that process in place. And to make this decision before we have that in place, I feel uncomfortable as to what our policy is.
Mr. Suso, what would be the potential continuance date with that requirement?
Well,
Take the later date?
Frank and I have discussed that. I mean, the board has the option of closing this hearing. You're not required to make a decision and leave the hearing open. You can leave it open or you can close it and just defer action for a future meeting, whether it be June 4th or June 18th. We've had some substantial staff discussions, as Frank has alluded. You have a copy of a memorandum gathered by Town Planner Tom Bott, which provides references to all the areas in the comprehensive plan that relate in some way to this concept. But I think that is the challenge in a flow-neutral bylaw. There are no standards set. There are no criteria enunciated by which the board can set this. We can come up with some, and we're happy to pursue that a bit further. But the hearing has to be set. You've done that. You've held the hearing. You make the determination about granting a waiver or not granting a waiver. But there's no guidance in the bylaw for standards that you set. That's why we have been working steadfastly behind the scenes with planning, health, and others, ZBA and others, in an attempt to come up with what we have in-house, recognizing that you're really breaking new ground as far as moving forward.
Well, I appreciate what Mr. Ahmed said, and I'd like to leave the hearing open. I did go through Mr. Bott's recommendations. There are a lot of specifics for the local comprehensive plan that were not addressed. I mean, the fact that a comprehensive and holistic approach to efficiently and effectively address the critical wastewater needs in Falmouth is essential. I mean, I think things like that really point out the fact that we need more information, which the board has clearly requested. Ms. Braga?
Well, I think even beyond that, and I'd like if Frank wants to weigh in, but I think what Doug is alluding to, and I think what would be helpful is, while the bylaw doesn't set forward any criteria, are we prohibited, it certainly isn't binding because it's not in the bylaw, but are we prohibited from sort of laying out some of that criteria so that folks that come before us as this procedure goes on, there's some consistency, there's a process, and we go through, I know there's been considerable work done already, but, some sort of, statement of these are the things that we'll take into consideration. I think it's probably one of the top important issues in our town in terms of dealing with wastewater management. We've invested significant money in it. We know we're going to have to invest significant resources in the future. And we know from Amy's review that there are other projects that will likely be coming forward to engage in this same process. So I don't know are we prohibited from doing that?
Well, I think that it's very important that you do something like that, because I think it's, in all fairness to the people coming before you, they should have some idea what they're dealing with. And also you as a board would like to know how to address these issues. And this is the first one, but we know there are going to be many more coming forward.
All right, so in view of the time, I'd like to have a motion to continue till the 18th.
I would do it not specific, time specific.
Okay.
I think aren't we supposed to, if we're continuing? I think we need to let our applicant know.
But I don't think we can make that, we may then continue on the 18th if we don't have this set in place, but.
That's fine, but I think it's only fair.
Frank, do we need a specific date? I suggested the 18th.
I think you need a specific date, you do. As for the time, I think you're flexible on that, but you definitely need a date.
So I'll take a motion to that effect.
Could I just make one more comment? I was going to just...
that doesn't close out the discussion.
Just that, I think we got our clear answer that we really don't have any latitude to do anything different than either approve or not approve. So I think a shorter delay as possible would probably be appropriate.
But we will have some policy information by then.
Right.
Yeah,
Sam?
And I'd also like to see if the applicant might be able to come up with some mixed use as part of this project, where you actually house some of your employees, because you're going to have a considerable number of employees who aren't all that well paid, and they don't have a lot of options in town. And so you might actually find it in your own business interest to have residential for employees. There are other businesses in town that are doing that because they have this year-round problem. And so they literally provide some housing units for their employees, and you might be forced into that situation. So I would, suggest that you go back and look at your business plan and see whether you could help us out as a community by taking some of that load off of us of the need for affordable housing, which you're going to increase by the very nature of your business. By the way, we're all interested in developing this end of Main Street. We really welcome your facility. What we're struggling with is how do we invest the citizens' money in a way that's a win-win for everybody.
Right.
But Frank, I don't think that's a part of the flow neutral bylaw. That could be the planning board, that could be other boards coming forward, or that could be when they come back to us again, asking for a letter of support, but not within this discussion, I don't think it.
Right.
I think it is very appropriate at some other point, but not with this one. And I also wonder, with the flow neutral bylaw, should we also be considering, we're gonna have people in the Little Pond Sewer Service area who are not hooked up right now, or not designed to be hooked up, asking if they can hook up. And it may be appropriate at the same time, what are we gonna do about those people?
And they've been asking, they've been asking for a very long time.
Right.
And they're in a bit of I know Amy's kind of got, the town has been keeping track of some of those folks.
Right.
And we've indicated there's no hookup until the whole project is complete, because we need to assess where that's at, so.
To see what our load is.
Yeah.
And all of that can be considered. Right now, we have a lot, we're going to be here until midnight.
Okay.
I really need a motion to continue
So moved
this
to
hearing.
June 18th, move the hearing.
Thank you. Is there a
Keep it open.
second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Water quality management committee is considering expanding.
We now have the Joint Base Cape Cod Commander's Briefs to the Board of Selectmen
Are we done with it, number one here?
with,
Yes.
yes, for now, thank you. Yeah. Frank, we're finished with number one. To all the folks at Joint Base Cape Cod, we appreciate your patience. We did, you were scheduled before we were able to assess the agenda. We would have preferred that you not have to wait so long, but thank you very much for coming, and we're looking forward to the presentation. Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, members of the board, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Brigadier General Chris Cole. I'm the newly appointed Executive Director for Joint Base Cape Cod.
Welcome, General. I've heard you speak, and I know you're good on your feet, but you have to be at the mic for the folks at
Oh,
home.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
You can take it out,
We don't
though,
like
if
to
you wanna
be
move
stuck
around.
behind a podium, but
Yes,
anyway.
I know.
So my name is Brigadier General Chris Foe. I'm the newly appointed Executive Director of Joint Base Cape Cod and a Falmouth resident. And based upon the earlier part of the meeting, we are going to go with a theme of brevity.
We like that.
And basically run through everything, and if you have a quick question, please go, but we are not going to stop on a lot of things. I think we've been dealing closely with Mr. Souza for a long time in the last few meetings. I'm not going to bring up any of the additional things I was going to bring up so we can get moving. Next slide. This is where we are.
But it comes out so you can
Just take it out and hold it.
Oh, all right.
There you go.
There you go.
sing, dance.
Okay, again, I think most of the folks, we've seen the presentation, that basically Joint Base Cape Cod takes up about 10% of the mass, the land mass of Cape Cod, 22,000 acres on the Upper Cape. Next slide. Although this is 2013 numbers, we have not yet contracted for our new overall assessment. They're still pretty representative of what we bring to the plate, and Joint Base Cape Cod, about $330 million. This tells you, relative to the rest of the state, this is all the other military facilities in the state, all fall within the property boundaries from a size perspective, Joint Base Cape Cod. So, joint installation partnership agreement, joint oversight group, interagency cooperation. So, joint installation partnership. Right now, we are actually going through, and I wasn't going to bring this up, we're going through what we call the Army Community Partnership Program. We've been dealing with you folks. I think it's an excellent program. We're moving forward. Our last meeting is 31 May. We've made a lot of progress. We're going to address some things, not everything that everybody wanted, but what this is the starting point of where we're going to be going in the future as a joint community.
It's a brilliant program.
Thank you, ma'am. Joint Oversight Group, basically, that's the members here. Joint Base Cape Cod is a joint base by gubernatorial declaration, not by federal declaration. So basically, there is no one commander. So we manage by group consensus. So it's a very effective system. I know in some situations that wouldn't work, but it works very well where we are.
We know what a challenge it is.
And at that point, I'm just going to hand it off to the commanders. The first one I'll introduce is Lieutenant Colonel Matt Porter, representing Camp Edwards.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome.
I'll do better behind the podium. Good evening, Lieutenant Colonel Porter. I'm representing the Army, and Colonel Keefe, who's the commander of the training site on the Army side. So really, this first slide is just to annotate. On the right-hand side, you have our garrison command and how we fall under the director, executive director, General Foe, all the way down to Colonel Keefe, and then down to our sections within our garrison, whether it's personal community activities, plans and ops, logistics, public works, and then information management office. And then on the left side, these are our tenant units. So on the Army side, we have quite a few different types of units, not only Army units, but also non-government or government agencies. So you've seen these slides before, as far as the Army units. One addition we have is 126 Cyber, so that's a new unit that just stood up. So we're really happy about that. Tentatively located on the Army, on Camp Edwards. It may remain there, it may not. It all depends where we station them in the future. And then also our other agencies here, Department of Agricultural, GIS, and as well as NOAA. Next slide, please. So what we do on Camp Edwards from the Army side, so we have brigade-size operations that we can handle. So we have the great thing about Camp Edwards is it's 15,000 acres in the northern training area, which really allows us to do a lot of maneuvering for our Army side. It's a great, most units do not, or most training sites do not have that size. So it's really unique in that aspect. But in order for us to do that, we have to integrate, live, virtual, and constructive type training. So we have a simulation center, a Mission Command Simulation Center that we do use to leverage that. And we also have some additional training, which is asymmetric threat training support, which is a regional asset that we house here at Camp Edwards as well. So really, combined with maneuver space, as well as our ability to integrate live, virtually, and constructively, and as well as some of our enhancers like the asymmetric threat support center, we are really able to conduct some really good training on Camp Edwards. Next slide, please. And it's not just the the wartime mission that we have, but also domestically. Camp Edwards, because of its facility, our ability to marshal as well as stage equipment, is really a great platform for us for domestic operations too. So it's a really important training site, not only for our wartime fight, but also for domestic operations as well. Next slide, please. These are just some of the ways that we maintain our training area. So we do a lot of prescribed burns. That's very important for us to maintain habitat. We also have some recreational hunting, 60 deer, 25 turkeys harvested this year, which is really good because we have to harvest, so otherwise they compete for resources. So it's really important for us to conduct that, and it's good for our nature enthusiasts as well. Birding is another event that we host there semi-annually. Physical security is good, but sometimes we have some trespassers, and really the issue is we have an impact area and we have some unexploded ordnance, so we just got to be careful about that, and we just like to remind people that come through the gates or come onto our base correctly, so we can make sure that where to train or what's allowed and what's not allowed, because there is some dangerous stuff out there that we're still in the process of cleaning up. Next slide, please.
Can I?
Sam?
Yes, sir.
One of the other services you provide to us is you're the significant recharge area for our sole source aquifer. So I want to commend you all for cleaning up some of the past pollution, but also for the management of some of that unexploded ordnance and what have you. Respect you for doing that, but boy, we're dependent upon you because it's such an enormous watershed for our aquifer.
Yes, sir. And we really turned it into a model platform that every school I go to regarding training sites, Camp Edwards is always mentioned as a model of how to do it right. So, what was in the past, an issue, really we have created a model of how to do it right for the rest of the country, which is remarkable. Some highlights here as far as our major construction that we have going on, $65 million in mill construction in 2015 through 2020. Some of the projects that we're talking about are our unit training equipment site, our UTE site, so that's currently finishing up construction. We have a regional training institute which just completed construction. We have the 3 groundwater treatment systems, and we also have a multi-purpose machine gun range, which is scheduled to come online in 2022. We're just starting the MEPA and NEPA process now. And and then getting back to your question, sir, as far as the water cleanup, we've spent over $1.1 billion between the Army and the air side cleaning up the impact area and water treatment. So it's a significant amount of money that has been spent to take care of that issue. With that, I'm going to pass it on to Colonel Doonan.
Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. Colonel Ginger Doonan, I'm the commanding officer of the 102nd Intelligence Wing. Otis, it's still considered Otis for the Air National Guard side. So this is just a depiction of the different missions underneath the 102nd Intelligence Wing. There's 5 major groups, 2 intelligence missions. We've got 1 intelligence mission that does the analysis on remotely piloted aircraft, U-2 and Global Hawk. Our other mission that stood up about a year and a half ago is our cyber intelligence mission. That's pretty much still in conversion, but we are in the middle of training people, and but we are doing operations on the cyber intelligence front on the cyberspace domain. We have a medical group, which includes a group that is the FEMA Region 1 medical response unit. If we were to have a chemical attack in the FEMA Region 1 area, they would deploy within 6 hours and set up a medical response team for that. We have our mission support group, which has various support functions on the base to include the base operating support of the entire base, to include utilities, septic, water. So listening to you tonight was interesting. And then finally, our cyberspace engineering group, which does engineering installation. They basically bury underground the cable for your internet and for different architecture abroad and here in the States as well. The big takeaway, we've got almost 1,300 airmen total, but only about 450 full-time employees. It says 419, but if you count the contractors, it gets close to 450. Out of that 450 people, we did a conversion last year. A number of our employees converted over to pure civilian employees, about 12.5% of our employees. So we are creating civilian jobs in the community, and that will continue in the future. Next. Just various things we've been up to. So last year we wrapped up one of our largest deployment years in the last 10, where we sent quite a few people over to 5 combatant commands worldwide, but they're all back safely. And at the same time, we did a mobilization of our reservists to do intel 24/7 analysis for a combatant commander. So those reservists every 4th year are pretty much being mobilized to do that 24/7 intelligence mission, and that will continue for the foreseeable future. Talked about our cyber intelligence mission. We also have had multiple engagements with the country of Kenya. We have a state partnership in the Mass National Guard with the country of Kenya and the country of Paraguay. The 102nd Intelligence Wing has spent a lot of time going over there, working with the Kenyan Defense Forces on their School of Military Intelligence and teaching them tradecraft as they fight those wars with Al-Shabaab, Boko Haram, and then ISIS in that region of Africa. And then, of course, we continue to do domestic operations with our medical team, our security forces, for all those standard events. One event that kind of took center stage this year was with the hurricanes, Hurricane Harvey, Irma, and Maria. The second picture from the bottom is a picture of our analysts using their tradecraft to do incident awareness and assessment remotely. So we went and we analyzed data in the Houston area, assisted teams that were doing rescues. You're going to hear from the Coast Guard and all the great work that they did down there. But we assisted the rescue teams during that period of time. And we can do that remotely anywhere in the United States. So we take off our intelligence hat and we put on the incident assessment and awareness, but using that same kind of tradecraft. Next. We continue the 102nd Intelligence Wing. We were affected by BRAC in 2005. For the last 10 years, we've been downsizing our footprint on the installation. We continue with our land divestiture, taking large land holdings out there and removing ourselves from the license and giving it back to the current users or giving it back to the Commonwealth. We have a number of pieces of land that are going back to the Commonwealth to DCAM to be sorted out where they're going to end up going to. We continue to look at privatizing our sewer and water and working with the 4 towns. Mr. Sousa got the first grant and now the second, working with the 4 towns so that they could possibly utilize that at some point in the future. And then we've got a big hangar that eventually, so we've pretty much finished up our military construction for an intelligence wing, but we have a number, three projects for smaller projects totaling about $15 million for different buildings. When that's done, we'll be out of our 160,000 square foot 50-year-old hangar. That's a lot of space. We've been looking at governmental organizations that may need some extra space. We've worked with Hui to get some of that moved up there. We haven't gotten there yet, but we've been in discussions with them and other organizations as well. Not taking away from any kind of commercial development, but obviously governmental. And then we have a couple of energy projects that are ongoing. Our microgrid will be complete this summer, and when that's done, it'll be the first operational microgrid in the Department of Defense, and it will be set up for the 102nd Intelligence Wing so that if the power were to go down, we would be using renewable energy and a battery to continue to have that energy reserve that we do to do our intelligence mission. And that's, I'll hand it over to the 6th Space Warning Squadron. It's always a pleasure to see you.
Thank you, you too.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. As mentioned, I'm Nate Hippie, the commander of the 6th Space Warning Squadron at Cape Cod Air Force Station, also better known as the PAPAWS site. So although we occupy perhaps the smallest footprint on the joint base as far as military installations, still just an incredible impact to national security and national defense. So I'll hit the highlights here and just mainly talk about the investment the DoD is continuing to do for our site and our installation. So as you all know, we're the only East Coast radar, early warning radar, providing defense. Missile warning is a primary mission, and also space surveillance for the entire East Coast of the United States and Canada. Some of the change, so although it looks like a static radar, there is a lot of change going on our site. So one of those investments from the DoD is to add future mission and upgrade our site. It's called the Upgraded Early Warning Radar System. We're the last one of 5 radars to go through that. It's a $125 million upgrade. Again, you won't notice anything on the outside, but as far as the back end and operators are concerned, the software, the hardware is all getting upgraded to more modern technology. So better user interface and, again, better hardware, software. Again, small footprint in terms of personnel as well. So 135 total, military, civilian, and contractor, about 80 active duty members. 6 civilians, and then the rest are contractors. And one thing to highlight there is we just recently went through a contract reacquisition. So BAE Systems had the contract for the last 12 years for operations and maintenance. Indyne has been awarded that contract. They're actually on site this week doing some inventories. But that contract across 5 radars is about $540 million over the next 7 years. So again, that investment continues. So we'll be around for a long time. Okay, if you want to go to the next slide. So just to give you an idea, again, $4.1 million operating budget. I'll just jump right down. We obviously, again, we don't have any housing on base, of course, so we rely on our Coast Guard partners, as well as the Army and Air National Guard for all the facilities that we use on the main base and support functions as well. Something to highlight, I mentioned it last year, so the wind turbine project that was in place about 4 years ago now, ahead of schedule is expected to be a $10 million, or I'm sorry, a 10-year payoff for an $8 million investment. Again, exceeding our expectations. It should be paid off within 8 years. And again, just to give you an idea, we're a huge electrical consumer on the Cape, and just the 2 wind turbines that belong to us account for about 95% of our overall credits for electricity. So big benefit for us. And then again, I talked about we just want to pat ourselves on the back, best Space Warning Squadron in Air Force Space Command. So that's good news for us. And again, thank you very much, ma'am. And that's about all I have, pending any questions.
Excellent report. Thank you.
Now I'll turn it over to Captain Hudson from Base Cape Cod.
Welcome, sir.
I don't do well with the handheld there like that. I'll stick with the podium. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Captain Mike Hudson, the commanding officer of Coast Guard Base Cape Cod. There are 2 major Coast Guard commands within the Joint Base installation. One of them is the air station, the pilots, and the other is the support command. I'm the support command. But I will represent both this evening and just briefly touch upon the air station. It's the only air station in the Northeast for the Coast Guard, so their coverage area is basically New York City to the Canadian border. The next closest air station is down in Atlantic City. 3 helicopters and 3 fixed-wing aircraft, as you see here. About 175 person command, of which almost all of that is active duty, very, very, very few civilians within that command. And in a typical year, they'll do about 217 search and rescue cases, or not in a typical year, but in a typical year, they'll do over 200. Last year, they did about 217. A couple highlights for the air station. Of course, we all are aware of the INO accident last June. A lot of air assets and surface assets responded to that. I'll cover Harvey in a minute, and then that fixed-wing aircraft that you saw is a very good resource for detecting and targeting vessels down in the narco-transit zone of the Eastern Pacific and the Western Caribbean. So some of the vessels they targeted led to seizures totaling about $230 million in cocaine. So hurricane was the big news story last year for the Coast Guard. It was an impressive year. Even I've got 27 years in uniform with the Coast Guard, and I still get impressed and wowed by some of what we accomplish. And last year was definitely a wow year. About 12,000 people were rescued by the Coast Guard across Harvey, Irma, and Maria. If you're a fan of pets, we also rescued nearly 1,500 pets and animals during the storms. This air station was a major contributor to the rescue operations in the Texas coast of Harvey. They sent half their aircraft and a third of their crew down to the Texas coast, and then turned right around and sent a third of their aircraft and 20% of their crew down to the next storm, and then finally they kind of had to taper off just for some home base readiness here. Next slide, please, Paul. All right, so the mission support side, that's my side. About 4 years ago, we decided that we should really be letting our pilots focus on flying and not handling all the other landlord functions that you would expect out there at the Joint Base. And so we established a separate base command that handles all of that. And so I am the landlord for the units you see here, the air station, Port Security Unit, Fisheries Training Center, Marine Safety Detachment. The new one on the list, and they are moving in right now, they're still unpacking their boxes, quite literally, I was over there today, is the Maritime Safety and Security Team Cape Cod. They used to be garrisoned up in Boston. It's an active duty unit with about 55 people in it, and they're moving down here permanently, taking space in our hangars, and I think they're kind of go live date is 1 June before actually being called the Cape Cod. In addition to the people inside the fence line, all the Coast Guard activities inside the fence line, we also support Sector Southeastern New England, which has all the Coast Guard small boat stations from Point Judith over in Rhode Island out to Provincetown, including the Vineyard and Nantucket. Quite a bit of area for mission support there. Paul, next slide, please. So our basic rundown of services, Base Cape Cod is comprised of about 250 people, and we have a 60-40 split, about 60% military, 40% civilian, plus we have some contractors and we have some non-appropriated funded employees that run the exchange and some of our morale activities. And I won't read the whole list here, you can see that. I will note on the housing, as Colonel Hippie said, our housing area has 215 family housing units on base, and we also are responsible for about 57 housing units off base, including Nantucket, Vineyard, Harwich, and some places in Rhode Island. And the tenants of those housing units include active Air Force, Air Guard, Coast Guard, and not just the Coast Guard within the fence line, but throughout the commuting region. And that, and the spirit of brevity, is it, ma'am. And I welcome your questions.
Questions?
I just have one question, and I'm not sure who might address it, but we've been hearing about some concerns with the plumes and some new monitoring that's going on. Does anybody have any information about that? Or maybe you could send somebody back on another day?
The PFAS, PFOA discussion.
So emerging contaminants, is that what the
Yes.
question was?
Yeah.
So there is some concern. So firefighting foam is one major source for an emerging contaminant that the EPA has put an advisory out for. It's referred to as PFAS and PFOA.
Right.
It is measured by parts per trillion versus parts per million, which is the standard that we've had in the past. There is some PFAS, PFOA sites, and the Air Force Civil Engineering Center, which isn't represented tonight, but it is part of the Air Force that manages the installation restoration program there, is doing some testing out there. The concern is that there was a memo put out by the Secretary of Defense, the Assistant Secretary of Defense for installations, that at guard sites on Commonwealth land, there would need to be a waiver process to continue to use federal money. That waiver process, we've put together a very comprehensive package. We were the first installation to do so. And we put together that package a couple of months ago in concert with the Army, and have requested, because it has a federal nexus of what we've done, that we use federal funds. Air Force Civil Engineering Center is currently still testing and is working on those sites, but the waiver package is awaiting an answer, and OSD, Office of Secretary of Defense, has not given that. It does affect a number of guard installations around the country. About 70 of the 90 wings are affected that way. So, as you know, the firefighting foam is one major source, but there's a lot of sources in other sites as well that it's in a lot of different things that we use typically. But that is something that we are carefully watching and working with Air Force closely on.
Yeah, so it's interesting to learn that previous ideas about the aquifer said that these things would travel so deep and go so far out into the ocean that there would be a concern, but it seems they're starting to percolate up into some of the kettle ponds. I'm not really clear, and I hope maybe someday soon that somebody can come back and kind of let us know what the findings are.
Give a better clarification.
Yes, please.
I think if we were to do that, we'd want to bring the Air Force Civil Engineering Center with us to give us a better understanding of it.
That would be great.
Okay?
Thank you.
Any other questions? Very grateful for all of the incredible professionalism. You have a star team. We're very aware of that from these reports that we get annually. It's very much appreciated. Folks have questions, and we appreciate you coming to this forum to really let us know what you have going on. Where we share your pride in the awards that you've gotten and the fact that you're leaders in this, in Cape Cod, and that gives us kind of, a step-up feeling in our security that we know you give the entire country. So, again, with gratitude and, kind of appreciate the brevity, but really apologize for that, because all of this could be a very long conversation. And, again, thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Paul.
Thanks a lot. Thank you, sir. We next have on the agenda discussion of beach regulations. Mr. Magato, did you want to lead off, or what would?
Yeah.
Jason, thanks for coming. Hi.
How are you? Thanks for having me. My name is Jason Schwartz, as Chairman of the Beach Committee. Again, in the spirit of brevity, I know you all have been, in your packet, received the minutes, timelines, and everything else from our November meeting moving forward. Just as a brief introduction, this has been a collaborative effort between the Beach Department and the Beach Committee, using rules and regulations from the towns throughout the Cape to kind of build a framework for what we have here. What I've learned from this endeavor is that we can't make everybody happy. And I've learned that if I actually did, I probably missed something or did something wrong. So we've kind of gone through this and had the public hearings and everything else. But I want everyone to remember a couple things. One must remember that rules and regulations don't allow you to do anything that's unlawful. Those are what laws are for, right? Rules and regulations are just there to help define otherwise lawful things and further clarify the rules. A beach day is a fluid, ever-changing event, and the beach staff has to be empowered with the flexibility to adapt as things change. Understanding that public safety is paramount. The more complicated and convoluted these rules become, the more difficult they are to enforce. And we weren't looking to codify anything or making them look like building regulations. We just wanted them to be real short and simple and easy to understand. So these rules and regulations are what a majority of the Beach Committee feels is best for the town of Falmouth and closely mirrors the management philosophy of the Beach Department, allowing primarily discretion for the staff to make the decisions at the time when they're happening. And I will, if there's any questions about anything that you've gotten, be more than happy to answer, and as questions come up,
Sure, and I just want to echo what you said. It's very important to the Board of Selectmen that the Beach Committee did all of the work that it has done, because we rely on you so heavily for recommendations. The process will be, this is sort of an overview, so folks know what to expect and what's been going on. In the very near future, at the next meeting, Mr. Suso, I believe it is, we'll be having an actual hearing as
Correct.
we're required. So this is, you're kind of teeing us up for that, and, be interesting, I think, Mr. Magato, in response to that excellent overview, that we just hear a little bit about, the process of outreach, and then I just want to turn it over to the board for questions.
Sure. The process, Bruce Magardo, acting beach superintendent, and the process was, I think, a learning for me. It was a learning situation for me as I found more and more people interested in what's going on at the beach. So we started off with Sue Moran coming to our November meeting to define for us what the article had in store for us. We then solicited beach rules from every town on the Cape and a couple from the off-Cape, just so I could have some balance. And I gleaned from that what I thought was some fairly important things. And then that was presented to the beach committee with a formal agenda so that people knew that we were discussing that. That was about 8 or 9 people. We also then put out an email to the town meeting membership, and eventually through the enterprise to the town's membership. And we had 42 responses. 8 or 9 more came in after that, but quite frankly, they were duplicates of themselves with different names at the bottom. And their input was broken down into suggestions and comments. All of that was printed. You have a copy of that. That was all presented along with the list from the first beach committee meeting to the April meeting so that the beach committee could see that again. And then that was referred then to Frank Duffy, for comment, and we added his comments into that. Then we refined it one more time. That went back to beach committee in May, just this past week. So that's where we are. You've been provided with the finished draft, so to speak. And I'm happy to answer questions about why something is there or is not there.
Sam?
Yeah. Well, having been a scout leader, I know what lifeguarding and supervision is and how complicated it can be, and I certainly heard that message in here that you can't encumber your lifeguards with policing the beach or supervising the beach without distracting them from the most important thing that they're doing there. But from my perspective, it raises the question, and I think Sue mentioned it, the outreach. How do we educate all these tourists that are coming in as to just what we expect of them? Because I think that's a big part of this. And how do we codify this and kind of get it in front of people and get them to pay attention to it?
Well, that last part's pretty much the big challenge, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
My thought was to sit down with the beach committee and come up with some way to educate people. And I thought of maybe just a piece of paper. I also thought of a computer message board with pictures and words. So when you're standing in line to get your beach sticker, you look up because you're bored, and you see beach etiquette. You see beach rules. You see concepts of things of how to behave at beaches. Now, some people would object to being told how to behave at a beach because the object is to have fun, but it's also to have safe fun. And so we have to figure out a way to do that. We also have the town's website. We have Notify Me on the town's website. We have articles that we can put in and links we can put into that. The FCTV has done 2 tapings with me, and that's available to the town. So we're moving on. I get the notion we need to get the message out. My metaphor for rules is that lifeguards looking at water. Now you want them looking at sand. Now you want them looking behind themselves. So the more times you have rules, the more you take away from their initial responsibility. So we keep it simple, and we keep it practical, and we try to do the best we can every day.
Megan? And I think the differentiation between noting that there are kind of rules that pertain to etiquette around safety, but also just, common use of a space versus if someone is doing something that is illegal, that's not what this is about. That's something different. There's a mechanism for that already if people are going beyond sort of the etiquette piece of it. So I think it's important to recognize that you guys have kind of taken in all of that information, even those items that are outside of the scope of generally what would be a beach rule, because they're more in line with just illegal behavior in general. But I think that the process that you used started with a very wide net and narrowed down. So I think it's really a testament to that outreach that you did what you did to get, to really solicit all of that commentary from folks.
I would also add that I have a pre-season and a post-season meeting with the two police captains. We review protocol and what to do and how to handle things so that my people never have to guess. We practice it over and over and over again. And anytime there is a decision to be made, I'm always available, literally 24/7. At least three of my administrative staff are always available during the workday, and that's a 10-hour day. So nobody in a chair has to make a decision by themselves, at least a big decision. Little ones they have to make.
Appreciate that. Other questions? Doug?
I guess I'm the eternal optimist who believes that the people who come to our beaches are willing to abide by the regulations and expectations we have if they know them. And I think everyone who comes to our beaches either is coming because they purchased a permit, at which point they can get a piece of paper that says these are what the expectations, or they're paying to get into our parking lot, and they're having to pay an attendant some money, at which point with their receipt or something, they can also get, and these are our expectations at Falmouth Beaches. And then it makes it easier for a lifeguard or for a resident who say, guys, you know what the rules are. Please abide by them. It doesn't have to become a conflict, but as long as they know, because either when they buy their permit at Mark's house or when they pay their parking attendant, they're given that piece of information.
To expand on that, when somebody comes into the parking lot, the parking attendant sits in what we call a PA shed. That has a metal sign with the rules and regs on it, so they see it when they come in, and it's on the back of every lifeguard chair. And then we also convey that verbally as the lifeguards move from chair to chair during rotations. So we feel that we inform the people, pretty much, on a regular basis. Last summer, we tried an experiment at the Heights. And we simply charged the guards to say, if they want to play ball, fine. But if it's going to be a problem, if somebody can't throw straight, if somebody can't catch, if somebody's going to have to run, if the ball's too hard, if it's not safe to do so, you got to shut it down. We had 40 people who said, why are you shutting us down? 40 groups, different times, of course. And the lifeguard said, because it's not safe. Look, these people right here, this family, and everybody, all 40 of those groups said, oh yeah, you're right, we'll stop. There was no deliberation, it wasn't any verbal jockeying. They shut it down. And it worked, I thought, very successfully last year. Very successfully.
Great. Other questions?
No, just if you print a bunch of these and give them out with the stickers, that's probably a good idea. What else can you do?
I want to find a way that I don't have to use up so much paper, because I'd much rather see if the town has one of those message boards, like a computer, that I can sort of balance pictures along with expectations.
Good idea.
So
Great
the process
thoughts.
next is just that we actually have
We will have a scheduled hearing. And again, gratitude for all of your hard work. It was really an extraordinary amount of outreach, and the final piece will be at our next meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Not public comment today. If you have a question, you can email me about the scheduling.
Next meeting, you're talking about June 4th?
Are we talking about June 4th? Yes, Paula. Yep. Next, we have the Senior Center schematic design, presentation, and discussion.
Good evening.
Welcome, Jim. Hi.
Thank you for having us here tonight. I'm Jim Vieira, Chairman of the Building Committee. And I'm going to be very brief because I know you want to see what Joel has to show you. But I also wanted to just bring you up to date on what we've been doing since May, since the ballot, the vote passed in May.
And you're probably going to tell us everyone in the audience from the committee that's here?
We will.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So I'll just jump in because when the slides can catch up with us. You gave us a charge in October, and that charge said that there would be a building committee that would work together with the town staff and to bring in a project that met the town's needs, both the needs of the seniors and the community at large, within the budget of $9.75 million. Can I move those from here?
Should be.
And that's the charge. The key line in this, I think, is the committee shall collaborate with town staff to achieve the shared mission of producing a senior center facility that best meets the needs of Falmouth seniors and the community at large within the available budget of $9.75 million. In October, at the end of October, you appointed a building committee. Patrick Callahan, who could not be with us tonight, Mike Duffany, Peggy Nickerson, and Dick Bowen are here. Chris is away. And I have to say, this is a tremendous group, and thank you for making these appointments, because it has been phenomenal. So you appointed us October 30th. We had our first meeting on November 14th. Our first order of business was recommending owner's project manager to the town manager, and we recommended P3 project planning professionals and Dan Pilata, and Dan is here. And we got Dan, that recommendation was done at the end of October. By the end of February, we had our recommendation for our architect. You are all familiar with Joel, and he came on board at that time at the end of February. We had our public forums in April. We had them at 2 and at 6, well attended. Everyone who wanted to speak had an opportunity to, well attended. So as you can see, we've been making good progress. We feel it's critical that we start construction in the fall so that we can do site work and as much of the exterior as we can before the next summer season and all the activities that go on there. So we've been pushing and making great progress with that goal in mind. So we come here tonight. Joel's going to show you some schematic plans that we've been working on, and we're hoping that without any undue delay, you'll give us a green light to keep working and move on to our next phase, which design development, which Joel will talk about. So thank you.
Thank you. So to keep on your schedule, you need us to give you the green light today.
It would be great today if there are issues that you need to address, certainly, hopefully not later than the next time you meet.
Welcome, Joel.
Thank you. Excited to get to work on the next phase. Thank you. The prologue I have for this is that everybody saw the UMass report and how the senior center needed to accommodate a boomer population. But if you look at beyond the baby boomers and what we're experiencing now in every community, think back to 1980 and 1990, what happened to the school systems. All the boomers' children went through these schools. So what I'm saying is when you look at the senior center, don't just look at it for the next 10, 15, 20 years. This is a 50-year undertaking, because that demographic line that you saw in the UMass report that levels out for a long time after 2030, which is what the report talked about. The schematic design, with that, it's a very flexible design, because who knows what you're going to need in 30 years' time. We have kept to the size requirements that were appropriated, and it has a number of interesting rooms that I'll walk you through, starting with a large multi-purpose room. It'd be about 3 times the size of this, with audio-visual capabilities. Many multi-purpose rooms beyond that for programming, and something that a lot of senior centers are bringing in is sort of that unstructured social space. We don't have a lobby per se. We have a lobby cafe that really is a place where seniors can come in and socialize and have that connection that's important. Because I think that what folks are recognizing now is the value of senior centers to a community at large, and to what the value of a healthy senior population is. The multi-purpose room on the first floor is here on the left. It's 2,500 square feet. It's one large room, one small room with a divisible partition. This is the front the front entrance, and the idea is to have that multi-purpose room close to the front entry so folks can come in, use that space. That can also be used by groups in the evenings and on weekends that may not be part of the senior population. So it's a very flexible space. And the reason that you come in and don't quite have a huge lobby here is you'll see in the site plan the view out of the site and the green space is sort of in the back of the building. So what we're having to do is create an entry space that draws people to the rear. A really exciting kitchen. It's not like a school kitchen for professional staff. It's a professional kitchen, but it can be used by volunteers and teaching. It can have programs for high school kids to come in and learn culinary arts, etc. So it's a very flexible space with a lot of backup for food storage to make their provisions less expensive. Has the 2 bathrooms that support Fuller Field with outside access. And in this back corner is that space I mentioned, the cafe lobby. So it's a little bit different of a design, as I mentioned, that you don't come in and have that lobby right there. You come in, and then the lobby's in the back. There's a fireplace, built-in TV. Here's sort of what you see coming in. You have the reception desk. There's a great access control point. Everybody signs in. Immediately to your left is a reception area, information, what's going on a day-to-day basis. But the idea is to draw folks to the back there where we have the snack bar on the left, and you can see through here the TV, the fireplace, and then to the right you can't see, and we'll show you that at the next presentation, what it looks like to be in the cafe and look to the outside. The second floor, I think we call it sort of the Russian doll scheme. It starts with a small conference room up front that's 250 square feet, that's for small groups, and then each room gets progressively larger as you work your way back. So there's program room, arts and crafts program room, another larger program room, 800 square feet, and then a 1,200 square foot fitness wellness center that doesn't compete with Gus Canty that is next door here. That's really equipment geared for senior type activities. You'll see there's no computer dedicated technology room. Now everything is with the Wi-Fi. Computer technology would be done with mobile systems, carts, so it's really great. We can take out one room that tends to be a dead room most of the time and convert that into a multi-purpose program room. But if you want to have the iPad or the computer training or what other technology comes on board, it goes in there in a flexible way. And we have these 2 very large storage rooms on both floors that allow that flexibility to happen. The administrative spaces are spread out so that there's always an eye on administrative staff about what's going on the floors, so everybody's not concentrated. On the first floor, that administrative staff is right by the entry, so not only do they see who's coming into the building, but they can look out to the parking lot and see folks that are approaching. It's a key element of safe access, and then there's a breezeway where people can wait for the bus underneath cover, and again, staff can look out and see who's out there. There's the 2,000 square foot basement, houses health storage, file storage. Basically, it houses some rooms that allow us to use the space upstairs really well. And I will say that these plans are well worked out with the committee. They're phenomenally efficient. There's no wasted space. I think everybody feels like we got more in the plan than anticipated. This is a view of the outside of the building, very preliminary view. The senior center obviously here with the existing parking lot being repaved, restriped. And the idea is to distinguish it from Gus Canty, but to obviously make it feel like it's part of the municipal campus with the police station here and the scale of them is appropriate and feels like hopefully a Falmouth-type building. The site
Just
plan.
a quick question before you go beyond. Would there be like bench space there? I can't quite see, maybe there's a table or something around that tree?
Well, there's green space, I'm sorry, that's a good point. This is the side that goes along the police station and one area that takes you to Fuller Field. There's green space, no tables there. There is underneath the breezeway a 15-foot deep area for tables. And then on the side, I'll get to it here, there's a courtyard garden space between the two buildings.
Thank you. So if you're waiting for a bus, you can sit?
Yes.
Great.
So, police station, senior center, Gus Canty, that sort of municipal campus idea. Here's that existing parking lot. This site plan was very fortunately previously approved, so it's shortening up our process considerably and allowing us to stay on schedule. The idea is the separation between the two buildings allows for a green space. The one comment that we got, there were two comments we got. One is over and over, can you accommodate solar on the building, either now or in the future? And that's one reason why we have this south-facing pitched roof on the building. And two was, there's a lot of asphalt in front of the building, so what can you do to mitigate it? And it's a tight site, but we can put green space around the edges, and then, again, it's a small space, but it can be a really great courtyard between the two buildings, and I'll show you a little bit more about that. Right now, we're showing the connector between the two buildings. That is something that the committee continues to discuss, because there's a lot of, now that we're into the details of the project, there's a lot of discussion on that, and I'll frame that. Taking this area as an enlargement, I think this is what folks really get excited about, and this back patio is what fronts onto the lobby cafe. So the idea is you come in, you take your way to this patio that's really quiet, really removed from the parking area, and then also happens to look out to Fuller Field, and hopefully if that concession building is redone as part of the Commodore's work at some point, that view out the back will be really enhanced. This is showing the connector between Senior Center and Gus Canty. Gus Canty happens to be 2 feet above the floor level of the Senior Center, because the Senior Center doesn't want to have any barrier to its entry. So there's a ramp that would take you across, and then the breezeway or the arcade that goes up the side of Gus Canty today could have a pair of double doors so that folks could also get through to Fuller Field that way in the event of a game. So I just, this is how it had been presented originally. Now that we're into a lot of discussion about site accommodation, and that we'll be developing the ideas for the patio and the more green space along different lines that we need to work with the building committee on, but sort of passive and gardening spaces that go into there. One thing that I alluded to in the overall site plan was there'd been a sort of a discussion of, is the connector, how important is the connector, and what impact does the connector have on the garden and other elements? I'm not prepared to say which one is the right way. I was only flagging that this has become an issue of discussion that the building committee is working on, because as you can see, without the connector, you have a much more integrated garden space and perhaps maybe a different flow through to the fields, but then you don't have that direct connection, and so there's many, many things that the committee has to evaluate. But I'll let Dan take the schedule on at this point.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. We've been working very, very hard, and I must say that your building committee has a near perfect attendance record. We meet every other week, and they will continue to meet every other week until we're completed with bidding, before they'll be able to go to, hopefully, monthly meetings. We expect to get design development done by the end of June. which is an important date for us. That finalizes all the decisions on anything that can be basically changed. From there, we'll be working on construction documents through the end of August. That's the nuts and bolts. Every single little screw gets detailed. And then we'll be into bidding in September and into early October. And we expect to be able to award a contract sometime in the first week of October. Construction will begin shortly thereafter, probably 2 to 3 weeks after the bids come in. I don't know.
That quiet was everyone's head snapping back.
Is that good or bad?
Amazing.
I didn't know whether I was getting snapped out of the room. So, with regard to the schedule, I want it noted that one of the things that everybody notes is that we're trying to get the building up and off the siding of the buildings so that when the summer comes, you can have access to the field again. We recognize that being in construction in June of next year on the perimeter of the building is going to make it really difficult for the town of Falmouth. So that's been a real big goal of the committee, and we're working on that. From a financial standpoint, the slide tells it all. Right now, we have had one estimate done. We'll have 2 more estimates before the project's done. We'll have another estimate at the end of design development to make sure that we're still tracking on schedule. Again, going back to your talented building committee, there isn't anything that isn't weighted financially, either by the OPM, the designer, or the building committee. The designer contract, owner's project manager's contract are done. The construction estimate at schematic design has been completed, and all the remainder of those items are basic estimates that have been carried through from the initial study and are still valid today. It leaves us with a 12.52% project contingency and escalation factor. So that number will start to shrink as we go through the design, but we'll have a healthy contingency before we start construction. So that's basically it in a nutshell.
Terrific.
I guess we're ready to take questions, right?
Questions?
I just have a question about, in terms of the, and I know it's something that you're still working through, but that connector, how is that going to impact, how much does that impact any of the numbers or anything? I mean, have you guys talked about if there's a big, how big of a role does that piece play?
It's not completely designed. It is estimated right now at $200,000, and that $200,000 is in the $7,395,000.
Okay, so
I don't want to quote a number that's not exact on that.
Okay.
So it's in there, but it's not fair to say it's a $200,000 item, because what we replace it with in the courtyard is going to take away from that. So anything we do to provide that connection has a value up and down.
Great, thank you.
Doug?
So I thought we might see a revised connector option today. Is there anything to discuss there?
Joel's still working on it, and the fact is that since our building committee met last week, Joel's been putting together some different ideas, but our committee hasn't seen it yet, and they're really not fleshed out yet. And what I'm hoping for is that the building committee can take another look at this and really see what Joel has to present, including some of the landscaping piece of it, in addition to the connector or ramp or however it works out, and then really come back and come back to you folks and say, we've looked at all these different options. This is the option that we really feel works best, both for the senior center and how we think the site works. So that's why, you're just showing 2 pictures up there, one with a connector, one without a connector. It's because really those options really aren't defined enough to get them up on the screen yet. So,
Mr. Scheer, did you have a question on the connector? Do you want to come to the podium because you had raised something earlier?
Well, first, I'd like to say I think these people have done a marvelous job. And I went to the meeting
what you had. I was very impressed. But I think a connector is extremely important. Number one, it was promised to us. I wouldn't have voted for this, what area or what to build it on if we didn't have the connector. I think it's the only way we, in the future, and I probably won't be around, or can expand. I've looked at the other senior centers in the area, mainly Duxbury, and theirs is bigger than ours. The town's a lot smaller, and it's really being used because they've got a large older population as we do. We were promised this when we started. I think it brings the two buildings and the two people together. I think if we close them off and don't have a really free-going passageway that's covered, we're going to lose a lot of the seniors' feelings about going into the Gus County. I think it is. We're doing a big project, $200,000, and which won't be $200,000. It'll be less when you get the planning and so forth, or maybe more. But that's nothing. It's peanuts. And even if we had to do landscaping on the whole building and would pick it up, or to make it even in the senior center itself, and fill the land beside it, but to bring it up, it is in a floodplain zone or a velocity zone. We have dirt coming out of the basement that what the contractor is going to take out and sell someplace. So,
thank you. I think we
why not
got
use
it.
But I think it's extremely important, and I think you'll get a big feedback from a lot of people that have talked to me, and I've talked to on the same feeling. Thank you very much for listening.
Thanks, Dan. Doug, you had a point?
One thing I'd like to comment on is the plans that we've seen tonight are very different than the plans we saw a year ago, all in the right direction, and not things I would have anticipated, but I just have to commend the committee about how hard you've worked to create such a better piece than I was ever envisioning. And I liked what we saw a year and a half ago, but I'm just amazed by how much you've gotten into this plan and how many the options for different spaces to be used in different ways, and I'm really impressed with that. I don't think that the connector cost is as much of an issue as the advantages to connecting or not connecting, and whether a second floor connector, which will still allow the passageway from the parking lot out to the fields, because I think that is crucial to be able to not block off getting from the parking lot out to the Gulf field, may also be something to consider. But my feeling is, whatever you guys as a committee decide, I'm so impressed with what you've done in the past, I'm willing to take your advice on it and say, you've made the right decision because you've considered all the options in a way that we just haven't had a chance to.
Very well said. Sam and then Doug?
Yeah, I just want to throw out, I had the opportunity to talk to Peter McConerty and Julian Suso standing out when we were doing the police commemoration, and just simply thinking, rather than having a 2-foot ramp, a ramp up a 24-inch incline, why not raise the whole building a foot or something like that to cut down the steepness of it, but and then just simply regrade the parking lot. And I think, honestly, if the town needs to look at its capital budget and come up with some money to do that reworking of the parking lot, that's an option if you're really getting that tight on the budget. So I would just want you to keep that in mind as an option, but just raise the elevation of the building a foot, cut down on the steepness, make it a little bit more accessible, and allow us to just raise the parking lot a little bit in order to be able to give you a level entrance into the building, which I think is absolutely crucial for the ADA accessibility, so.
I
anyway.
want to go back to what Doug has said in terms of the amount of man-hours and expertise that have gone into this, because I think that one of the things the committee clearly has its eye on is the mandate from the selectmen and from town meeting on the budget. And I don't see that we would have another year to, put $1 million into a grade change or to go back to town meeting for such a, really an earthquake of a change. I think that the feedback has been heard, and as Doug Jones has said, all the machinations and kind of turning the prism so many different ways in view of all the public comment has really brought a plan where you look at it, and before your head can say, boy, the next thing you should see is whatever, a bigger space, there it is. I mean, the dynamic, the building grows as you come in, which is a very welcoming feeling, where things, kind of get bigger as you get toward fuller field. I think that whole vision, once it comes to fruition and is built, is really going to be spectacular. Doug, I didn't mean to usurp you. Go.
I just want to say, I wonder if we could just at least talk about the management considerations that are involved with the connector, because I think that's part of the problem, or do you prefer to wait till the next meeting to go into that?
I think what you're talking about is the traffic between the two buildings?
Yes.
Okay. It's really important the way we operate, and I'm talking from Council on Aging standpoint, not a building committee person. The way we operate our senior center is to have everyone go in the front door. That is critical for us because that's how we get our counts, and that's how we get people registered. So everybody needs to come in the front door from wherever you're going. Even when you go out to the cafe and you go out to the patio, you obviously can come in and out of the patio, but from the patio there's no way to get down any place other than within the patio because the grade in the back slopes down, so the patio is off the ground, so there'll have to be a fence around it anyway. So once you go out to the patio, you come back in. So you're not getting people from the outside entering through the patio. Everybody goes in through the front door. So in practice, if there's a connector, it's primarily going to be for people going from the building over to Gus Canty, because it's really not, we're not going to encourage people to come in that way. So if you're in Gus Canty, then we're going to want you to come in the front door so we can get our count, we can get you registered, and we can keep the building secure. So, while we talk about this wonderful flow between the two buildings, it's really kind of a one-way street. And, it's for, the seniors can get over to the rec department. But people that are in the rec building, when they want to come into our building, they need to come in the front door because we need to have the count, we need to have them registered, we need to have that level of security within the building. So, those are the kinds of things that the building committee is still kicking around, and how that plays in to the whole worth of the connector. And maybe there are ways where we can have other registration going on so that there could be two ways. But right now, the way our program works, everybody comes in the front door. That's how you get in. You don't get in the side door, you don't get in the back door. We have a back door, it's a service door. People bringing deliveries in from the kitchen or a caterer, they come in. We unlock the door, they come in. If you go out the back door to go down to a program at Gulf Fuller, you want to come back in the building, you come in the front. So that's kind of how our program works from a program standpoint. Not that it can't change, but that's how we envision it right now.
I just feel like if you're going to permanently restrict the building because of the way you operate right now, that is a short-sighted limitation. Because I think, for instance, the playground opposite the library, they lock that door when the school is active and that playground's in use. But once it's done, people come and go in and out of there because there's no need to restrict access to the playground when there are when the school program is not going on. And I just would hate to see you close up. Now, I can tell you also, just using the schools as a parallel, now, you can't get into the school unless you have a pass. And it seems to me if you're trying to keep track of counts and you want your seniors to have a pretty inexpensive pass, they could slap it up against a reader and you'd know exactly that they've come into that door and they're using the facility having come from the recreation. There are answers to these questions, but from a citizen's perspective, I don't want to see you cut off a more integrated use of that building that may be important for future programs.
Yeah, I think you just made my point, is that this is how our program is now, and this is part of our discussion, is exploring the different ways that we can make this work.
Great, thanks.
Well, no, I was just going to say, and you guys have already, I'm sure, thought about this, and then 10 other things that we haven't even mentioned. But, there's certainly lots of ways to have connection available that isn't open access all the time. I mean, there's plenty of spaces that are like that, right? So it's accessed by personnel when it's appropriate, if they're taking a group from one place to the other, or later on if needs in both buildings change. So there's certainly ways for it not to be consistently open for the reasons that you note that I think are important reasons for both facilities. For Gus Canty should know who's in their facility, and the senior center should know who's in their facility. So,
thank you.
Thanks.
Anything else?
Thanks for the hard work.
Great presentation. Thank you so much for the update. Really appreciate all of your hard work. It's extremely impressive. Is there anything in particular you need from us tonight?
Madam Chair, the
Yes,
schedule
please.
permits the board to take this under advisement until your next meeting, unless for whatever reason you choose not to do so.
So you're looking for essentially an approval of the current plan? What is?
On June 4th.
On June 4th.
I'd give it to them now, but if we need to wait till June 4th, go ahead.
I just hope we can really kind of come up with at least a rough draft of what the connector will be for that. Is that possible?
Yes, I think that when we come back, the discussion presumably will be mostly about the connector. I don't hear a lot of other questions about what we're doing or a lot of
Everything else
concerns.
is beautiful.
So, you could even tell us that, we're good to go other than the connector piece, which we're talking about.
that's the motion that I would make.
I'll
That you're
second
good
that.
to go other than the connector piece, that we would like some further, once you have an opportunity to discuss it. That's my motion. So.
And Sam
Second.
seconded?
Yes.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thanks very much, we
Really great.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have a discussion.
Madam Chair, could I just
Yes,
ask, when are you
please.
asking for the connector to be discussed? In 2 weeks?
June
June
4th.
4th.
Yeah,
Okay.
sorry.
They have
Just
their
want to make that clear, otherwise
absolutely.
you may not hear for 30 days or 60
No,
days.
good
or
point. We were
If
going
they're
on your
ready.
suggestion.
I think he said they will be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, thank you.
June 4th, thank you. Next, we have a discussion of the political sign bylaw. Mr. Suso, we had scheduled this originally kind of in response to a lot of public questions, a lot of context of the building department, and, just really response and concern with respect to signs being in places where Falmouth didn't traditionally see signs, and they were mostly question or election signs. And so we scheduled this as really a discussion on the current status and, what any concerns that have been brought to selectmen, and then kind of segueing for a future discussion into maybe some changes that could be made to address that. So I don't know, do you want to start with town council?
Yes, I think it'd be appropriate to have Town Council Duffy maybe give us a real brief thumbnail as to the fact that there are some gaps in our current sign bylaw that had to do with actions taken well over a decade ago, and that there may be some fine tuning that could give you some ability that you do not have currently.
And I want to just mention, the building commissioner was here at the beginning of the meeting, and just anticipating that this was going to go very late, he mentioned that, he had a lot of ideas to put forth, and I just let him know and told him that I would, make sure that that I just didn't think we'd get to that level of detail at this meeting, but I know that you have him ready for the next.
Very good.
Mr. Duffy?
Yes, again, Frank Duffy, Town Council. I sort of expected that the building commissioner would be here, and perhaps Ali Fitzpatrick, who does the actual enforcement. But when I saw this item coming up on your agenda, I spoke to Mr. Suso, and I said, this might be a good time just to bring forth to the board for some consideration an opportunity to revisit the sign bylaw. The sign bylaw was adopted by the town in 1999, so it's almost 20 years old. And there have been some significant changes, probably in sign technology at that time, over that time. But one of the things that has happened is that about 2 years ago, we had a Supreme Court case, town of Reed versus the town of Gilbert, Arizona. And this town in Arizona had a comprehensive sign code which regulated signs by categories. And one of the categories that was subject to regulation was political signs. There were other categories of signs. Well, it was a rather complicated case. It went on and on. It went for about 35, 40 pages, I think it was. And I'm certainly not going to get into all of the details. But in the end, the court decided that when you have a bylaw regulating signs that regulates signs by the content of the sign, then you have a content-based sign bylaw, and they found that in certain circumstances that creates a violation of the United States Constitution, particularly the First Amendment and the freedom of speech. So over time, and I belong to the Massachusetts City Solicitors and Town Councils Association, and we have had some meetings where we've discussed this, and the recommendation that is coming out of the association now is to take a look at your sign bylaw, see how it comports with the recent Supreme Court decision, and make the necessary amendments so that your sign bylaw is content neutral so you don't run across constitutional issues. Now, this is going to be an undertaking that will involve probably the planning department, certainly the building department, perhaps a member of the Board of Selectmen, some people in the community. It's not something that I can sit down and do, and I wouldn't even undertake it myself to do this, but I would be willing to participate in it. And that's my suggestion, that you have a situation where we know that there's a lot of consternation in the town, particularly around election time. Signs go up, they come down, there are places people don't expect. All of these can be regulated, but they have to be regulated in a bylaw that's content neutral. So I think that's where we're going.
Megan.
And just to that point, I think, there is the bylaw, which isn't necessarily that accessible just in terms of understanding for lots of folks. And then there's kind of the tradition of the way things have been done. And those things, I think, run afoul of each other and cause a lot of, I know everyone here, I know Frank and probably Julian as well, got emails from individuals, demanding that certain signs be taken down because they're in violation of the bylaw, when they're not necessarily in violation of the bylaw as it is written right now, but it's not how things have kind of quote-unquote been done. So I think that your suggestion, Frank, is well taken, that it's probably time to review it. It's 20 years since we've done that. There's certainly new, new case law that would help us maybe craft that and come up with something that is at least clear so that folks have something to refer to that delineates what it is that they're allowed to do. And, I think elections are already emotional for lots of folks. And then when you add to it, it was just an ongoing stream of arguments about placement of signs, and does this mean the town supports a particular position if the sign was on sort of town property. So I think it's a great public discussion to have, regardless of what comes out of it, because it brings the issue to the public forum and gets kind of a conversation started.
Yeah, the bylaw would look at the location of signs and also the temporary or the temporal time that they're up.
Mm-hmm. Right, because, by now, this long after the election signs become litter. It really, they end up sort of, they're not really timely anymore. They kind of do clutter up the town when it's not, exactly the point of relevancy. Are there any questions or comments for the rest of the board?
Okay.
Thanks for volunteering.
I knew I was going to be.
So, Madam Chair, just to clarify then, is the board asking that we return to the board with a potential draft sign bylaw in time for a November town meeting?
Absolutely, and maybe a discussion and some outreach between now and then.
I think, excuse me, I'm sorry. I think that, I think we have to do some discussion and
Right.
outreach, and maybe, as Frank, I think, was suggesting, correct me if I'm wrong, but that we get some individuals who are willing to sort of participate in the process. If Frank's willing to, I just don't want to put everything on Frank, because, you know, so does this mean that he's going to hold public meetings and he's going to take those notes and craft them? I think we just need to decide how that.
I think if we schedule the item on our own agenda, I think that opportunity for public comment would inform town council along with the other departments that he's working with under the town manager's supervision, whether a big building or planning, as I mentioned. But that would be great. Thanks for volunteering for this.
Thank you, Frank.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Next, we have on the agenda.
Just as long as I did stay all this time.
Oh, I know. Please say something. Yes, I know. Poor guy.
I thought.
What do you know about any of them?
Please.
Madam Chairman.
Yes, please.
I reached out to other town clerks.
Okay, Michael, introduce yourself.
Michael Palmer, I'm Falmouth's town clerk.
We know who you are.
I reached out to the Massachusetts Town Clerks Association. Everyone seems to be in the same situation. In fact, I asked for copies of political sign bylaws, and they were asking me what I had. And some people sent me back some things that were just a tick more than we had. But I think the majority of candidates post signs in the traditionally acceptable area. You get some people that are pushing the window, and I think it's a fluid situation from one day to the next. Signs have changed, signs that get stolen, signs get re-put somewhere else. You get candidates maybe that have committees that here, find 10 locations for my sign, and that's where you're finding them up in front of the administration building or on the golf course or other places like that. But I think candidates, as a rule, really try to stick to the traditional places that signs are put up. I had a conversation with Doug Jones earlier this evening, and I think he had a very good suggestion. I'll let him bring it up. Maybe is get some kind of commitment from the candidates to abide by some type of regulation. So I don't know if you want to expand on that or want me to, Doug.
Oh, sure, you suggest it now.
I mean, if we can't come up with a bylaw, because I think we did try to get a bylaw passed about 8 years ago, the Attorney General said we didn't have the authority to be able to restrict the signs like that. Whether we could ask the League of Women Voters if they would come up with a pledge that they would ask candidates to either agree to or not to agree to. That would be not either us as candidates coming forward or current elected officials, but again, a nonpartisan group saying, this is what we've done in Falmouth. We appreciate the political activism, but we also are concerned about the appearance of the town, and we don't want to have signs left on for 2 months before and a month after.
Yeah, I just think that would be a great idea to get a commitment from the League of Women Voters, maybe the people that can do it, and just as early on in the campaign to get a commitment from the campaigns to regulate these signs and keep their campaign workers in check to traditional areas where signs are put up and not just the random sign places that we seem to have found this time. But
Doug?
And it's going to be committees too, because
Right.
they make signs as well.
Good point.
Correct.
Michael, thank you for
Thank you.
staying. That added a whole new dimension.
I was leaving at 8, and then I was leaving at 9. I said, I've stayed till 9, I might as well stay till the end.
You're so interested. I appreciate that. Megan?
Since you're here, we didn't note this, but just a huge thank you. I mean, you know, last week, I was at one of the polling stations to see, just for you and all the volunteers, folks put in so many hours, and you know, it's a very formal process. It's probably the most important thing we do as citizens, and it's a lot of work for the clerk's office and for all of those folks who volunteer. So a huge thank you. As far as I know, you know, I think people had great things to say about running smoothly, places being open on time, everything going well. So thank you, and to all the volunteers as well.
Yeah, thanks for saying that. There are a lot of moving parts in this, a lot of people that play big roles. My entire office did a fantastic job, and just the election workers, over 100 of them that work at the polling places. They're
so
really some
pleasant.
dedicated people, and go out and do things correctly, and that's the thing. You want elections to be run smoothly. When they do run smoothly and people don't notice, then
That's what you want.
that's a
That's
good
the goal.
thing.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
So a lot of people put a lot of work into it.
We noticed.
Well done.
Yes,
Very
well
nice.
done.
Very good point. Thank you. Thanks, Michael.
Madam Chair, can
Yes.
I just, I certainly want to echo the comments congratulating Michael and his staff for their, excellent work, so well-deserved. I also want to thank Michael personally for the extraordinary diplomacy that he and members of his staff exercised as sign complaints were laid upon him, one over another, and those several days right before the election, I know personally that things became extraordinarily challenging to deal in a diplomatic way, as Michael does so well with this multitude of sign complaints, given all the uncertainty. So I really want to applaud and thank Michael for taking that on as town clerk and for responding in a way that kept the tenor positive in a time when it could have quite easily gone negative.
Actually, I mean, signing in the whole realm of campaigning is just a very small part of campaigning, and a lot of emphasis will put on signing for whatever reason. But I can guarantee you, in all my years as town clerk, not one sign has gone into a polling place and cast a vote. So they don't vote. So.
That's
Well
good
said.
advice. Thanks,
Thank you, Michael.
Very, very good point, Julian, the voice of reason. Okay,
you,
we
Frank.
are on to whether to approve the Shellfish Advisory Committee charge of May 3rd, 2018. Ms. Braga, do you want to read it into the record?
I can read it into the record unless folks...
Whatever your pleasure is, the board will recall, you'd ask Peter to rework that and bring it back
We
to the
did.
board, and that is what's been brought to you at this point.
I guess we'd heard one email on one comment before we read the whole thing. And I guess I am prompted to consider that the last sentence is not something that the Shellfish Advisory Committee should really be taking into consideration. That I think there are conflicts there. I think it's not their expertise.
Well, why don't you explain
Sorry,
what that
the
sentence
sentence
is
says
for
the committee will also seek to support the mission of the Water Quality Management Committee to improve water quality in town estuaries in a cost-effective manner by increasing nitrogen uptake by shellfish. And I just think there's so many questions as to the validity of how well it works, and for them to be trying to keep track of that.
Well,
I think it's something the Water Quality Management Committee is going to be doing, but to have the Shellfish Advisory Committee doing, I'm not sure it makes sense.
Can it just be, excuse me, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Megan.
Can it just be, the committee will also seek to support the mission of the Water Quality Management Committee, period?
Or consult with?
Or,
Well, you're going to have a designee from the water,
Collaborate with.
you're going to have a designee from the Water Quality Management on it.
but it's going to be an important part of their mission, and it's what we're headed toward now is going to be mostly managed by fisheries rather than town staff, which was the original, I think, the original control that I think was trying to be placed, and now that's being somewhat relinquished to this more commercial fisherman type advisory committee. But I think at some point, and I think, being the last sentence is appropriate, there should be some reminder that it's an important part of the town's plan. And they're not saying that they will do what the water quality management says, they just seek to support the mission, and it's just a reminder that it's an important part of our plan. So.
I appreciate that, but I think, Doug makes an important point that there is a Water Quality Management Committee designee, so by that fact alone, the committee is hearing that input and appreciating that member's concerns. And I really think the last sentence crosses a bit into the Board of Selectmen's, place where it's kind of a, it's more of a policy issue, and it's certainly, there is a water, and the point that Doug was making, there is a water quality, management committee, and there will also be a Shellfish Advisory Committee, and both reports can come to the Board of Selectmen, and the Board of Selectmen, I think, can integrate that. So I appreciate Doug's point.
And maybe another way of doing it is to put a period after estuaries and say the committee will also seek to support the mission
Right.
of the Water Quality Management Committee to improve water quality in town estuaries. And not put in a cost-effective manner by increasing nitrogen uptake by shellfish.
Because that's where it gets technical.
I like that. At least the other's an aspiration that we want them to consider.
Right, absolutely. And so,
I agree. I think that it muddies the water, so to speak, with that last piece of it. But I do think we want to just, part of it is, a big piece of this is health of our water.
Right.
I guess that's a good edit, and it still gives them the reminder that it's...
That they're part of a bigger picture.
Right.
And I think that's important. I wouldn't want to strike it all entirely.
Do you want me to read it with
So
that
let's,
Okay.
do you want
I would
Megan
move
to go
to-
through it for the audience, or?
absolutely, but my
Okay.
motion is that it would be the
With that edit.
charge with that edit.
Okay, so I'll just read it for the record. Shellfish Advisory Committee charge, May 3rd, 2018. The Shellfish Advisory Committee shall be appointed by the Board of Selectmen in accordance with relevant provisions of the Falmouth Home Rule Charter and town bylaws. The committee shall consist of no less than 5 members and no more than 9 members. The board shall seek to maintain membership that balances 4 stakeholder groups and includes 1 or more individuals with a scientific background in shellfish biology or marine ecology, commercial shellfish license holders, recreational shellfish license holders, aquaculture grant holders, water quality management committee designee. The above representation is intended as a guideline, and the Board of Selectmen may exercise its discretion in its individual appointment decisions. Members shall be appointed for staggered 3-year terms. The Falmouth Shellfish Constable shall serve as the ex officio staff representative to the committee. The mission of the committee is to advise the Board of Selectmen with regard to management of the town's shellfish resources, including regulations, propagation, and aquaculture planning. The committee will be informed of Town of Falmouth shellfish activities by the Shellfish Constable and will serve as a resource to the Shellfish Constable in developing plans related to shellfish activities. The committee will disseminate information to stakeholders and to the public and solicit public input on shellfish policy matters. The committee may advise the Board of Selectmen on aquaculture license applications where feasible and consistent with compliance with the Conflict of Interest Law. The committee shall support the mission of the Marine Environmental Services Department to preserve, protect, and enhance shellfish populations, to sustain recreational and commercial shell fishing in a manner that is consistent with promoting the overall health of marine ecosystems. The committee will also seek to support the mission of the Water Quality Management Committee to improve water quality in town estuaries. That's Doug's proposal.
Yep.
The remaining part of the sentence is, in a cost-effective manner by increasing nitrogen uptake by shellfish. That would be
Deleted. Yeah.
So that being the motion.
Is that your-
As read.
I'll second.
Sam will second.
Should the constable be non-voting ex officio staff? I mean, he's not a member of the committee, right?
I don't think he votes if he's ex officio like that, right?
Ex
You
officio
have
just
to-
means that you're automatically on it by
Automatically.
position. It doesn't
I don't
mean that
think-
you're,
Are you asking if he needs to if we need to clarify that he's a non-voting member?
right.
We could just say, and shall be a non-voting member.
Or just put non-voting in parentheses.
Right.
Ex officio in parentheses, non-voting.
Okay.
Okay, so with those 2 changes, that's Doug's motion.
Yes,
Okay.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Nice job.
Thank you.
Thanks, Peter. Julian.
Great. Next, we have a discussion of the response to the building commissioner's directives on Wind 1. Mr. Suso, do you want to summarize that?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Just passing along to the board. This is a draft letter of transmission to the building commissioner. And that I did receive one suggestion that I am comfortable with, presuming that the board members are as well. That would be at the end of the second paragraph, indicating that the disposition of of Wind 1 may include an agreement where the town continues to benefit from some of the power generated by the relocation. And that certainly would be appropriate and would be noted at the end of that paragraph as well.
Is that what I sent you?
Correct.
Thank
Yes.
you.
Yeah, Madam Chair had sent that along, thank you.
Okay.
I appreciate it very much, so it would be, I think that is, makes great sense to include. Beyond that, this has not been, of course, transmitted. I did want to discuss it with the board in advance, but I have reviewed it in considerable detail with town council, and I am very comfortable with what has been presented to you as meeting the spirit of what we need to do.
Mr. Sousa, do you want to read it into the record for
Certainly.
folks at home?
Happy to do so.
Thank you.
Again, this is a draft a letter directed to Building Commissioner Rod Palmer, subject disposition of Wind 1. Dear Rod, I'm writing in response to your directive regarding the disposition of Falmouth Wind 1. This directive requests that the town, quote, prepare and submit to me, meaning the building commissioner, for its, and in parens, Wind 1, dismantling and removal from its present location, and request that the plan be submitted by May 31st, 2018, period, end of quote. Be advised that the town intends to dismantle and remove a Wind 1 from its present site, period. New paragraph. The town has been in the process of working with an engineering consultant while exploring multiple potential disposition alternatives for this wind turbine, period. There is no option available to the town to consider any relocation of Wind 1 within the town of Falmouth. There are multiple options available to the town with regard to the possible relocation of Wind 1 to a new site, either within or alternatively outside of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And then I would add the sentence, and I'm paraphrasing here, but a disposition of Wind 1 may include an agreement whereby the town continues to benefit from some of the power generated as a result. Last paragraph, the town is to continue to work, the town plan is to continue to work with one or more engineering and related consultants, as well as working with representatives of multiple alternative property locations for potential Wind 1 relocation. One or more of these scenarios require that state procurement regulations be followed, which involves significant processes and timelines to be honored and addressed, period. Two procurement issues are, A, disposition or transfer of title to another property. Item B, hiring a contractor to dismantle and remove the wind turbine, period. This plan for the dismantling and removal of Wind 1 will require 18 to 24 months to responsibly undertake in a cost-effective manner on behalf of the taxpayers of Falmouth. Sincerely, Julian M. Suso, Town Manager.
Comments, questions?
I move we authorize the town manager to write this letter.
I think it's sufficient and answers and addresses the proper plan.
I'll take that as a second.
A second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank
Nice
you.
job, Mr.
Thank you,
Suso.
Julie.
Thank you very much, members of the board.
Next, we have minutes of meetings. Okay, so we start with May 7.
I'm going to abstain from all of those votes. That's the meeting I was absent from.
Which ones, the executive sessions are first?
Sure, executive session first.
I move-
Or May 7, is that what you have?
Session 1, yes.
Okay.
I move approval and not release for public access.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye. And for session 2, I move approval and release for public access, I believe.
Is that finalized, Mr. Suso?
The other party's not signed off
Oh,
on
okay.
that yet.
And
Okay.
and not
that's just
release,
for a
approve and not
Hold on
release.
that for a
Okay.
short while Second. yet.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Next?
This is the open session?
Yes,
I do have,
for May 7.
a couple of edits.
Okay.
On.
Do you want to hold them and send them to the secretary since she's not here?
Sure, be happy to.
Would
There's
that work,
actually,
Mr. Suso?
Certainly it would.
there's even some redundant language in here that we need to take.
All
I'd
right,
be
so
happy to
let's
do
just
that.
hold that and work with her on that, and that is it. Individual selectmen's reports. Doug?
Well, I attended a meeting of Senator DiMacedo's first meeting with the Steamship Authority to just get a grasp of the situation and understand what the question is. And, well, the question was that we were hoping that the Steamship Authority was, earnestly looking whether or not New Bedford freight was going to be a possibility. And so steamship staff, Mr. Davis and Mr. Sayers and some other folks were there, and several Woods Hole residents and myself, and actually a couple of guys from the Vineyard, Tristan Israel and Yule Hopkins also attended, which was great. So we shared a lot of information, and it was just a good initial meeting, and it was very good to hear from Mr. Sayers that although the parameters of this freight proposal are very similar to the last time, the one thing that they're not going to do is make a big mistake, as he put it, in arbitrarily saying there's going to be a freight increase, which I guess they did last time, which is no wonder Vineyard people expect an increase in cost when that was the policy last time. So that won't be the case. And they made it clear that also that whatever system is proposed will be totally voluntary and nothing will be forced on Vineyard people, which is, I'm sure, welcome news to them. And so it was a good initial meeting, so it was great. I'm going to actually go over to Oak Bluff Selectmen's meeting tomorrow just to introduce myself and listen in as they break down the Tetra Tech report on the freight and get their understanding of it, and just try to reach across the pond and make sure we're not creating any waves with our inquiries into this.
Makes a lot of sense to coordinate that at the beginning. Sam, did you have anything?
Yes, just several activities. I attended the Coastal Resiliency Action Committee's public listening session. I thought it was a useful session where everybody, Doug was there, several people was there. Secondly, the Police Officer Memorial Recognition Day, where they honored Samuel Pierce, who was killed in that line of action, Officer Pierce, back in 1933, and also recognizing Sean Gannon's recent killing. It's a great opportunity to really thank the police for what they do in maintaining law and order in our town, and certainly enjoyed participating in that. And the other activity was the Wounded Warrior Soldier Ride that I know Doug was at also. We didn't turn out very good weather for them even on a second try. No, it was raining, but it's good to see these folks, and they certainly were still spirited in spite of the drizzles. And we're raring to go, and it was nice to be able to support that. And I know that there were citizens in the town that were actually at various crossings to help cheer them on. But it was nice to be able to participate in that.
That was great. Thanks.
Just quickly, Cultural Council held their annual kind of night to highlight the grantees. Or the grant recipients, and it was just really wonderful to attend. Just across the board, they've supported a number of individuals in a variety of, musical, different types of art, photography. They had given money to the Portuguese American Association for some of their cultural activities, so it was great to be able to participate in that and also connect with the state representative from the Mass Cultural Council, who was also present. And was, just impressed with the individuals that we have in our town that are presented that night. And then the other piece was just that Human Services. I was able to attend a meeting where they were reviewing some of the RFPs. As folks recall, they've changed their funding formula, where they actually put out a request for proposals from various organizations. Rather than just always kind of funding smaller amounts to the same organizations that they've done over the years. They're giving large amounts. Really impressed with the applications, the services that are already being provided that organizations are looking for some support for, that are being provided in the community, as well as some that may potentially grow here in Falmouth, but really looking at important issues, mental health, opioid crisis, supporting our students so that they can remain in school during sort of difficult periods where some of their mental health needs may usually have them removed from school. So just a great, I think, the fruits of that change, which were not, the change was not easy. I think the fruits are really, they're the change is bearing fruit, is what I should say. So hopefully they'll have some announcements around that soon.
That's great. That's a great initiative. Doug Brown and I both attended the Cape and Islands Selectmen's meeting on the Vineyard, and the big talk this month was the marijuana rules that have come up. We actually had 2 of the commissioners at the meeting, so it was very cutting-edge presentation. That presentation is going to be available to all selectmen on the Cape, and just very interesting to look at what Massachusetts and the Cape is going to experience as this comes to fruition, how hard those folks are working and how they're taking lessons learned from Seattle, for example, and a lot of expertise. And again, another initiative where the mainland Cape and the islands have come together to really work through this information.
And it was interesting to learn that they are so concerned with public, the vote to legalize marijuana, that if we continue to ban pot shops, or zone them out or whatever, then the Cannabis Commission is going to somehow enact another vote, that the public will have to vote again to affirm our decision to ban pot shops. Did I get that right?
Well, I think Falmouth is covered for that and anticipated that, but for folks where there was a moratorium, they have kind of solidified the process. So communities that had a moratorium now know what the next step is. But I think Falmouth was covered for that. We did anticipate that. Doug?
This time of night I'll...
Let it go. Report, Mr. Suso. Couple interesting
Thank you,
things to
Madam Chair.
mention.
If I could just pass this down, as Selectman Jones' assistance. I was asked if I might give a brief summary of the recently discussed recreation and beach collaboration. I did attend a recent beach committee meeting and will be attending a recreation committee meeting at the request of Chairman Bob Brown. I look forward to that in the coming week. But just to summarize this for the board, again, unfortunately, some early news reports, frankly, got it wrong. Did not speak with either myself or anyone in the town manager's office, and this is an attempt to clear the air. I believe that the selectmen are well aware, but I want to go through it again. In bullet point form, bless you, Megan. Recreation has had an existing compensated assistant director position vacant since February 2016. That's 28 months. And with the support to the recreation director of 2 full-time positions, those have been in place for an extended period. They're both program director positions in recreation for these past 2 years. Recreation programming over these past 2 calendar years has proceeded in an appropriate and businesslike manner, and not received any complaints about normal operations there. The duties of this same position, which has been vacant for 28 months, have been slightly adjusted to include routine administrative and clerical support for the beach department, which has not had this level of administrative support in the past. In addition, Recreation Department support responsibilities will remain with this same position. Obviously, this will require a qualified individual who has both the necessary experience to balance and facilitate the important work of both departments. The job title for this position that has been adjusted as to duties is Senior Program Director for Recreation and Assistant Beach Superintendent. Moving forward to fill this past vacant position as specified will assist both the recreation function as well as the beach function, working collaboratively as it provides further enhanced staff support to both. This has absolutely no impact upon the continuing roles of both the Recreation Committee and the Beach Committee, which are appointed by the Board of Selectmen. Both the Recreation Department and the Beach Department remain as independent, standalone departments. The Peach Department continues to operate in a hybrid manner with maintenance support from Public Works Department as in the past, and now we'll have administrative support from the Recreation Department. I want to emphasize that no new permanent positions are being created. For consultation with Town Council, this involves only the adjustment of duties for a single existing staff position. And unfortunately, there's been some a misunderstanding of that, and again, this is summarized in furtherance of trying to clear that up.
Appreciate that.
Thank you for that opportunity. A couple other routine items. I was pleased to attend the initial meeting of the Charter Review Committee in the past week, convened by Town Council Frank Duffy. We're pleased to have this important committee begin its work. On Tuesday evening, I attended the latest meeting of the Senior Center Building Committee, and as you know, good progress continues to be made. I attended the Beach Committee meeting this past week, talking about this position as well. Also, as a reminder, we look forward to the town's annual Memorial Day ceremony. It's scheduled to begin at 10 a.m. this coming Monday, May 28th, in front of the main library as per usual. And at 9:45, again as per usual, there will be a procession stepping off at Town Green to proceed to that ceremony. I was also pleased to attend the Coastal Resiliency and Wounded Warrior items that were mentioned earlier. Pleased to attend those functions. And also on Monday, May 28th, Town Hall and the town administrative offices will be closed for that Memorial Day holiday. As a reminder, at your upcoming meeting in June, I'll be asking the board to consider setting a date and time for your annual Board of Selectmen retreat. And I want to congratulate Selectman Doug Jones on his recent reelection, and also to Sue and Megan in being reelected as chair and vice chair of members of the board. I look forward to continuing to work with you both in that leadership position in the coming year once again. Thank you, concluding my report.
And you as well, thank you.
Thank you.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Great.
Don't
Thank
leave
you.
yet without your hats, you guys.
Hi, I'm Pat Thatcher.
And I'm Margaret Gifford, and we're from Sotheby's International Realty.
And you know, Margaret, I think the word that best describes this real estate market this year is opportunistic.
I think that's a great word to describe what the real estate market's doing now.
I think it is also. And that says, if you're a seller, by golly, get your house ready correctly.
And if you're a buyer, do your homework.
So if you want to be part of this opportunistic real estate market, jump on that horse.
Carlson Printing for all your printing needs. 508-548-7303 or toll free at 1-800-696-7303. Our email address is carlsonprinting@aol.com. Carlson Printing for all your printing needs.
Hosting services for fctv.org are provided by Meganet Communications. Meganet offers a wide array of internet services, including Mega Backup Cloud Service, server colocation, T1, fiber, Metro Ethernet, as well as telephone services such as hosted PBX and digital voice. Their #1 goal is to keep your communications network up and running and allow you to focus on growing your business. 877-634-2638 or meganet.net.